that's what I love about hip-hop entrepreneurship. It prepares our students mentally, physically, and it helps them to understand what life is really about.
We're excited to see where our kids are going to take us. So we have an idea of what we wanted this program to be, but it's also really student driven. So we have a lot of students who are interested in different entities within the music field. So we're excited to see what they're going to bring to the table as well and what they're interested in. Mr. Strader connects with the kids on multiple levels. He has been through the thick of it, he's been in the ups, he's been in the downs, and he's able to get on their level and really talk to them about what it means to be a leader.
The kids at Sawyer, man, they're great. It's so awesome to see the growth. So the Grand Sawyer students are over-exceeding me. They're getting better with public speaking, you know, and they're expressing themselves, and they know that they are our future. We really need you guys to raise the level and the bar so you can be prepared for this, what we call this life.
So Mr. Strader actually started off here as a guest teacher. He's taught science, English, PE, everything under the sun, you name it. He coaches basketball, he does the hip hop dance team, a little bit of everything. Mr. Strader is just an advocate for all things good for children. He built this program on his own, and I was fortunate enough to bring it here. Our students love the class.
She actually has worked here a few years as an SBTA and finished up school last year, and the second she applied, we took her in. She's part of our family. She's so dedicated and committed to our kids, and I know that she just makes a wonderful addition to our staff this year as a licensed teacher.
I was actually doing in-home ABA therapy with autism, and then this just kind of felt like the next step, and I started off as an aide, and then I just went to school, and here I am.
Our primary autism students of special needs need so much. They need so much care, love, attention, somebody that's going to pour their heart into the classroom and make sure that they get everything they need. And with students in our autism class, they're at all different levels.
Every day is like they pick up something new. It's a milestone, and it's excitement. I got to tell mom and dad, you know, every day is a new day, and we start off with love. And you know, if today we're just not feeling it, then hey, we're gonna save that for another day, and you know, we're just gonna take it slow. They've definitely taught me. It's very fulfilling. Yeah, I love these kids.
And I remember the very first interview when we sat down and met Mr. Salisbury. He was everything that the department had praised in him, and so much more. He was a manager at Starbucks previously, and he just had such a great wit and intelligence and authenticity that I knew our students would just absolutely relate in a way to Mr. Salisbury.
On behalf of Clark County School District, I am honored to let you know you have been selected New Educator of the Year.
I was working for Starbucks, and I was working on a ARL program that I enrolled in through Alta so I could start teaching. Even if you can't reach every kid, you're going to reach and change lives somewhere along the way.
Their buy-in, so just want to say thank you. Continue doing the amazing work you're doing on behalf of the students here at Desert Oasis. So congratulations.
We're so excited to have him aboard with us as one of our newer members. He is the future of our school in many ways, especially in our English department.
So Miss Day started with us a couple of years ago as a long-term sub, and we just saw she was natural at it. And so we worked with her and helped her get into the I Teach program, and she did that this year. She's just been phenomenal. She's so wonderful to have on our campus. The kids love her. She's got such a big heart, and she is really a natural.
Wonderful Miss Day. Are you Miss Day? Hi. I I wanted to recognize you as New Educator of the Year.
I just received New Educator of the Year, and so I'm in shock. This year it was challenging. We had a few ups and downs in our classroom, but we pulled it together. Other than that, they're funny. They are brilliant. I love my students.
If you don't have the right heart to do this job, it's going to be very difficult. And so she definitely has that heart.
Not only does she help support our social emotional learning blocks in all of our grade levels by pushing in and providing whole group lessons, but she supports our students in our MTSS frameworks and students who've had unique challenges throughout the school year as well, working with them in smaller groups to help support their learning.
You know, starting out as a brand new counselor, I didn't know how easy it would be. And I think it takes time, but once they see that you're a safe person who wants the best for them and who is there to listen when they're going through things, they begin to trust very easily. It's very validating and very awesome to hear that people value my work and appreciate it, and yeah, I'm kind of speechless.
We are here to recognize Ms. Sullivan. New Educator of the Year.
I am overwhelmed with joy. I was totally caught off guard, didn't even know I was nominated. Sometimes I just feel like I'm just working and going with the flow, and my students just helped me to make it come alive and make a difference, and I guess it all just paid off in the end.
We are so blessed to have you as part of the CCSB community. Congratulations.
My students are amazing. They believe in me. We have conversations. That's the first thing I did when I came in, is develop a relationship with them. If I can get them to trust me and they know that I care about them, then we go from there. They come in, I notice everything about them. If they got a new haircut, I want to know what they did on the weekends. I care about their family because that makes a difference in the classroom.
I want to thank you for just coming into our school system, first-year teacher, wonderful 6th grade class.
When you see those smiles on the kids' faces, it will keep you pushing. There is a need, and those kids over there, they need us.
Sarah is kind of unassuming. She's calm, she's quiet, and when she gets into the classroom, it's magical. She really enjoys the kids, and you can tell it right off the bat.
I won the New Teacher of the Year, and I was so shocked. I was not expecting it.
Congratulations. Aren't you guys so lucky to be here?
There's still gonna always be that growth that needs to be made. But I feel like I have just become a little bit more confident in my teaching, and I can see the results in my students, and that's probably the most rewarding thing about teaching.
She protects them, she takes pride in them, she helps them every step of the way just like a mom does. But she's very professional too, so she really is the whole package.
I think that students that enroll in dual enrollment or advanced placement or even CTE, our CTE students are taking industry recognized credentials. Our advanced placement and dual enrollment students are earning college credit while they're in high school. If a student was very committed, they could probably finish their associate's degree prior to graduation and maybe get a good amount of their core classes out of the way prior to entering in college.
So one of the great privileges of being a part of even our CTE courses or advanced placement or the Jumpstart programs, HVAC, is that there is no cost to our student population.
And so I think it's really incumbent upon us to find what our students' strengths, talents, and abilities are, and to make sure that we're giving them those opportunities to build that toolkit as well as that blueprint to help them with whatever they decide to do once they leave us, college, career.
When they walk across the stage, they are ready and a step ahead of most seniors in other places because they have the credentials or the credits at no cost to them.
Pues es muy confortable porque en general
it feels great to have a center like this. I don't feel lost, or the community doesn't feel lost because of the supports that we're receiving.
His son, Simon, his school contacted our office because for registration, in order for him to be registered, he needed certain documents. And because he spoke Tigrinya, they referred him to our center.
Family Support Center has been open since this last October, so less than a year. The Family Support Center was initially established with the idea that we were going to have a place here in CCSD where our families can come whenever they were in search of information, whether it's related to academics, resources that they might need, any questions that they might have. We've now noticed that as families are getting more familiar with the work that we do, we're now just supporting any CCSD family that comes through our door. So we really started to kind of expand the supports and services beyond just supporting newcomer students and families.
La verdad me han hecho sentir muy bienvenida, muy especial.
So we felt very special and welcome. We felt very good about being here. There's so many experiences, not just my own, but others, and we're very grateful.
Muy bien aquí.
It has helped him so much for his transition with his family, and I hope that you guys continue to support the community that way.
The goal of the Transformation Network was to match the expertise of educators with the needs of students. We needed increased support. We needed increased professional learning to bridge that gap so that we could meet our students' needs. A lot of people ask, why just elementary school? Because elementary school is where kids learn literacy. If they don't leave elementary school literate, they're going on to middle and high school. They don't have access to education.
What is key about the Transformation Network is they are not in our schools telling us what to do. They're in our schools to talk through the problems. What I see from the Transformation Network is that they're looking at the school community as a whole, working with me to say, hey, these are mitigating circumstances that, no, you can't control them, but how can we address them?
We have a coach that works directly with us, and he's available to come in and do professional development for us on our Tier 1, our basic instruction. They send in subs to cover those teachers so that they can actually go to professional development, which is something that we've never had in the past.
What's beautiful about it is they're seeing what's happening in all of these other transformation schools. So, and at a very deep level, just like at my school, at a very deep level. But they can bring those fresh eyes, fresh ideas to individual principals. Hey, so-and-so had a similar situation, this is what they did, this is how they tried it.
We have put together an amazing team. They are coaches. They are there to help, they are there to support, they are there to provide professional learning. They are there to meet people where they're at and help that school move a step forward to better serve kids.
We know that Tier 1 instruction is for all students. We need to service all of our students with academic learning, social-emotional learning, and behavioral learning as well, meeting them where they are across the 3 tiers. So we're looking at the month of July to be able to start providing that professional learning, whether it's sets of materials, right, that we can use for the professional learning, digital account access, just to start getting the materials in teachers and administrators' hands. So how we go about doing that is we incorporate their voice into what they want to see in the professional learning, along with those effective practices that I mentioned earlier. We also work alongside the vendor. The vendor is the expert of their materials, right? And so what we want to do is make sure that we have our consistent district focus and the vendor supporting us as we're learning these materials together. And of course, it's not a one standalone professional learning opportunity. It has to happen over multiple phases and depending on the readiness level of our teachers as well. So we also have to differentiate our opportunities that we provide to meet the needs of our teacher.
So that's what I love about hip-hop entrepreneurship. It prepares our students mentally, physically, and it helps them to understand what life is really about.
We're excited to see where our kids are going to take us. So we have an idea of what we wanted this program to be, but it's also really student-driven. So we have a lot of students who are interested in different entities within the music field. So we're excited to see what they're going to bring to the table as well and what they're interested in. Mr. Strotter connects with the kids on multiple levels. He has been through the thick of it, he's been in the ups, he's been in the downs, and he's able to get on their level and really talk to them about what it means to be a leader.
The kids at Sawyer, man, they're great. It's so awesome to see the growth. So the Grand Sawyer students are over-exceeding me. They're getting better with public speaking, you know, and they're expressing themselves, and they know that they are our future. We really need you guys to raise the level and the bar so you can be prepared for this, what we call this life.
So Mr. Strotter actually started off here as a guest teacher. He's taught science, English, PE, everything under the sun, you name it. He coaches basketball, he does the hip hop dance team, a little bit of everything. Mr. Strotter is just an advocate for all things good for children. He built this program on his own, and I was fortunate enough to bring it here. Our students love the class.
Kessel, she actually has worked here a few years as an SBTA and finished up school last year, and the second she applied, we took her in. She's part of our family. She's so dedicated and committed to our kids, and I know that she just makes a wonderful addition to our staff this year as a licensed teacher.
I was actually doing in-home ABA therapy with autism, and then this just kind of felt like the next step, and I started off as an aide, and then I just went to school, and here I am.
Our primary autism students of special needs need so much. They need so much care, love, attention, somebody that's going to pour their heart into the classroom and make sure that they get everything they need. And with students in our autism class, they're at all different levels.
Every day is like they pick up something new. It's a milestone, and it's excitement. I got to tell mom and dad, you know, every day is a new day, and we start off with love. And you know, if today we're just not feeling it, then hey, we're gonna save that for another day, and you know, we're just gonna take it slow. They've definitely taught me. It's very fulfilling. Yeah, I love these kids.
And I remember the very first interview when we sat down and met Mr. Salisbury. He was everything that the department had praised in him, and so much more. He was a manager at Starbucks previously, and he just had such a great wit and intelligence and authenticity that I knew our students would just absolutely relate in a way to Mr. Salisbury.
On behalf of Clark County School District, I am honored to let you know you have been selected New Educator of the Year.
I was working for Starbucks, and I was working on a ARL program that I enrolled in through Alta so I could start teaching. Even if you can't reach every kid, you're going to reach and change lives somewhere along the way.
Their buy-in, so just want to say thank you. Continue doing the amazing work you're doing on behalf of the students here at Desert Oasis. So congratulations.
We're so excited to have him aboard with us as one of our newer members. He is the future of our school in many ways, especially in our English department.
Miss Day started with us a couple of years ago as a long-term sub, and we just saw she was natural at it.
Morales, and I call this regular board meeting of August 24th, 2023 to order. The time is 5:03 p.m. I'd like to remind everyone to please silence their electronic devices. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the territorial homelands of the Nuwu, the Moapa Band of Paiutes, and the Las Vegas Band of Paiutes. We're going to begin with a Pledge of Allegiance led by Trustee Bustamante Adams. Please stand. Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. We're going to move on to the adoption of the agenda. Trustee Cavazos.
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. I would like to make a motion to adopt the agenda with the following changes. Additional reference material is provided for item 4.03, 2023 legislative session overview.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Williams.
I'd like to second.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Cavazos and a second by Trustee Williams. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 7-0. Now, before I open the consent agenda, is there anyone who has not had a chance to complete a public speaker card? They're yellow like this. If not, please do so now. Can you please come there? Yep, thank you. There are some yellow public speaker cards up here. Okay. Please turn them in here. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Now we can, all the yellow cards have been submitted. We're going to begin with individuals who signed up in advance to consent agenda items. We'll begin with James Bayless, Vicky Corridell, Stacy Segal, and Jordan Wagner. Mr. Bayless, thank you for your patience.
CCSD's on fire! Jara is a liar! A liar!
Security, can you please ask the woman in the second row to step out?
Jara is a liar! CCSD's on fire! Jara is a liar!
Right here, this woman in the second row, first seat. No, right here, closer to us. This one. She started with the process. Thank you. Fourth row, forgive me. Fourth row, security. 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 We're going to go to the woman that, yes, forgive me. Yes, thank you. No, 2 rows down. Yep, thank you. The woman who's blonde. Yes. Woman. Please ask her to leave. We're going to ask for the room to, ladies and gentlemen, we don't want a repeat of last week, our last meeting. And that means that we're going to ask for your, this is a business meeting. Okay. We cannot conduct business. CCEA is clearly interrupting business of our organization. It is very clear that CCEA has intentions to ensure that we do not conduct this meeting. We're going to ask you to, we're asking the woman who instigated the remarks, we're not going to let her stay. By chanting, CCEA is involved in disrupting a government meeting, and it is clear there's no intention to ensure that we conduct our meeting. I encourage her to step out. I'm asking her to step out, and I've asked security and officers, thank you, for working to remove her from the room. I appreciate this side of the room who is conducting themselves with decorum. It is very obvious that CCEA has no desire to allow us to conduct our business and are continuing to interrupt the business meeting. We're asking you are interrupting a business meeting. This is disruptive conduct. Per NRS 241, examples of disruptive conduct include, without limitation, yelling, stomping of feet, applause, heckling. Infringing the rights of staff or meeting participants, and you're doing that by not allowing Mr. Bayless to provide public comment. We're asking, thank you. Thank you, officers. It is very obvious that CCEA, the individuals who represent CCEA in this room have no desire to allow the district to conduct its business. If you are going to conduct yourself in this manner, we will ask you to leave the room. If you are asked to leave the room, you will be trespassed. And again, it is, Mr. Frazee, please have a seat. This is not your time to speak. It is Mr. Bayless. We are in public comment. You can conduct yourself and stop allowing us to conduct our meeting. We are asking you. CCEA is disrupting. Security, can you please remove the gentleman who is not? He is welcome to leave. Yes, this gentleman is welcome to leave. Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye. You're being asked to be removed, Mr. Frazee. Please step out. Thank you. Yes, he needs to be out too. Thank you. We're going to ask the police to return to the room. We're asking Mr. Frazee to be removed from the boardroom for his misconduct and interrupting a business meeting. Thank you. Mr. Frazee, please leave the room. Ladies and gentlemen, if this behavior continues, we will ask you to leave the room. If you continue to disrupt the meeting, we will trespass you. There are plenty of other people in this room that do not belong to CCEA and have clear indications, clear priorities to disrupt a business meeting. If this continues, we will ask you to leave. We have individuals. Thank you, Mr. Bayless, for your continued patience. This is a business meeting. We need to conduct this. Please ask this gentleman to leave. He clearly has no intentions to allow us to have our business meeting. Thank you. Thank you, officers. This gentleman needs to leave too. The gentleman who just stood up needs to leave. Thank you for asking him to leave. The gentleman who just stood up and came to the podium also needs to leave. That's correct, the gentleman who approached the dais. You are being asked to leave the room, sir. You continue to disrupt our meeting. You continue to disrupt our meeting. It is clear that CCEA members who are here, who are wearing blue shirts, who are also screaming excessively, have no desire to allow us to conduct a business meeting. We're asking the gentleman who is saying sinvergüenza to leave the room. Please leave the room. If you continue to disrupt the meeting, you will be asked to leave and will be trespassed. Thank you, officers, and thank you. So please. But this is another example of CCA continuing to disrupt a public meeting, conduct themselves without decorum. Thank you for providing us another example of your lack of decorum and your disruptive behavior, along with breaking NRS 241. You will be asked to leave if you do not know how to conduct yourself in this meeting. Mr. Bayless. Mr. Bayless, you're up for public comment. We have Vicky Crydell, Stacy Segal, Jordan Wegner, and Autumn Tampa. I believe that, Mr. Bayless, you're up, and we're going to start your time. Go ahead.
Okay. James Bayless for the record, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Dr. Jara. So I was informed to come up here to let you guys know, addressing what I said over at the Oversight Committee. I guess some of my family members heard me talking over there and informed me that they weren't aware of Ian's situation. They were misinformed on a lot of situations. Daniel Bahara is ironically directly in situations with Jara. A lot of you guys didn't do a lot of things, so they wanted me to inform you guys that the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance will no longer be backing you since you wanted to attack one of their family members. They found out the truth this morning. I showed them everything. So your very defense is going to be your influencer. So the situation at hand, with that information you'll see, was the plan, what he was planning on doing, which Carson didn't know about. They're not really happy either. The fact that he was offsetting all the school properties and sending it to Global Alliance and making them magnet schools instead of the public school system as it should be. Yeah, they weren't aware of a lot of situations that this man was doing. There's this business plan that they were presented. They just thought you guys would like to know about it. So they'll be rectifying that situation in-house. So yeah, but they'll still be working with you guys. So situation at hand, we'll get rid of the root of the problems, fix our system, we'll fix our sped system, and maybe we can get back to the glory that Vegas used to be before all the toxic fumes came to our place. You know, Florida has a tendency to the freaking, what is it, the swamps, all that gas, man, it followed them. You have a good one.
Mr. Bayless, please, ladies and gentlemen, please do not applaud. This is not, we are asking everybody who came into this board meeting, who received a public comment, meeting decorum document, to please refrain from clapping. Thank you. I don't see Ms. Crydell. However, you, Stacy, welcome.
Thank you. All right. In planning my remarks for tonight, I did a search for synonyms for the word morale. Two of the words that popped up really stuck out to me: optimism and hope. I can't think of too many teachers right now who are feeling hopeful or optimistic about their future in this school district. How could we? Despite the fact that every year you pile more and more requirements and responsibilities on us, most teachers have not gotten a significant raise in many, many years. How can a teacher feel optimistic when after working 50+ hours a week, teaching, grading, writing lesson plans, learning new programs and technology, attending PLCs and other staff meetings, writing learning intentions and success criteria, dealing with discipline problems, and communicating with parents, they need to drive for Uber Eats, bartend, or sell plasma to make ends meet? How can a teacher feel hopeful about their future when the already stretched thin budgets take unexpected hits, when our insurance, which we pay an awful lot out of pocket for, isn't funded in a way that properly covers needed medical procedures and prescription medication, leaving us with co-pays we can't afford? How can we be hopeful or optimistic about our futures in this district when so many of the people who run it clearly don't like teachers? It's really quite baffling, actually. Yes, this circus that is the current contract negotiations has absolutely affected our morale. We are angry and resentful. We are tired and frustrated. We are struggling. You have caused us stress that we don't deserve, and some of you seem to take pleasure in knowing we are suffering. But even with all of this aggravation, you can't take away all of our joy. You can't steal from us the feeling we get when a student who has been struggling has that aha moment. You can't remove from our memories the looks of appreciation we get from our kids when they feel how much we care. You can't touch the stacks of heartfelt notes we get from parents expressing their gratitude for the differences that we've made in their children's lives. It's funny, but I don't think a parent has ever written one of those notes to a New Line screen or an HMH workbook. Yet those are the things that you choose to prioritize. Despite the fact that many of you clearly do not know our worth, we know our worth. And it's time that you prioritize us. There is nothing you can do at this point to improve morale and retention until you give us the compensation we deserve.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've asked you to refrain from clapping. If you cannot do that, to be clear, again. Jordan Wenger. Okay. Autumn Tampa. I don't believe is here either. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move on to, forgive me, we have one more consent item. Derek Sheets on item 2.09. It is, yes. Derek?
Yeah, hi, thank you for your time. So my concern with agenda, or with item J, the disparity studies, that is granting a recommended award for $63,950 for the disparity study. The disparity study is evaluating contracts based on business owners' race, ethnicity, and gender, and it seeks to establish a rollout, a timetable for developing an equity program, and establish rules for funding and contracts within CCSD based on race. On the disparity report, back in the June meeting, one of the things that was referenced as an example was how minorities were denied bank loans, but did we ever ask why? Do we know why? Was it bad credit, length of credit, poor spending habits? Being a minority and simply getting denied a bank loan doesn't mean you're denied because you're a minority. I also find it hard to believe that going into a bank, the bank is actually denying you because your skin color is the actual reason. Also, on the flip side, most credit applications are done online where no one even sees your skin color or what you look like, and the creditor that approves it is not usually an actual person, but is usually automatic, generated by the computer system through the actual lenders, and where your skin color is never even seen, observed, or taken into equation. The disparity report seems to be intentionally vague in some areas. It appears to be a part of the recent growing environmental social governance ESG programs. So what is being implemented? What is the goal of this? And if it falls in line with ESG, here's the concern. The CCP uses a social credit score. Citizens are downgraded or upgraded based on what you do. In understanding that, the environmental social governance metrics is the same but is applied to businesses. This affects what you do as a business and eventually what you do as a citizen. As per Dr. James Lindsay, who wrote The Marxification of Education, the ESG comes from the United Nations, formulated in 2003, and the objective of ESG is to use your money to do impact investing according to their environmental social governance schemes at the level of corporations, branding, and sustainability. It's often advisement on how to run a business based on inclusion, equity, and sustainability. So the Declaration of Independence guarantees life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It does not guarantee success. It offers the same chances, not the same outcomes. There's a common misconception that equity and equality mean the same thing. Equality before the law means that each citizen will be treated fairly by the criminal justice and judicial systems regardless of their status. Equality of opportunity means that a person should be granted a chance for education, for occupation, promotion, or progress in society for reasons related to their competence, not to immutable traits such as skin color. Equity assumes to guarantee equal outcome by removing competence and merit-based factors. The only way to guarantee equal outcome is the redistribution of wealth and resources. Redistribution is no more than a euphemism for socialism, and in this case, race Marxism. If we promote people solely based on immutable, unchangeable traits such as race or gender, rather than merit, work ethic, accountability, we are inherently limiting the chances of the most competent in the workforce, while at the same time we are de-incentivizing work ethic, we are de-incentivizing integrity. And the irony of this is that the most competent in the workforce based on merit and based on competence in these things are the ones that ultimately benefits the public good the most. So just as a Christian, I want to reference as well what Paul writes in Colossians 3:8, that God does not favor one race or the other. Mankind does this. We are all made in the image of God. We are all the same in Christ.
Thank you. Please At this time, colleagues, I'm looking for a motion to adopt the consent agenda. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Guzman?
I second.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Brooks and a second. Sir, I'm going to ask you to leave. I'm going to ask you to leave. Please, can we trespass that gentleman who just, okay.
Get off your phone.
If you have something to say, you're welcome to use public comment at the end of the agenda. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm now looking for the vote. We have a motion by Trustee Brooks, a second by Trustee Guzman. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 7-0. We are now going to move on to the warrants. Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. Ratified warrants as listed in the bills payable transmittal and board memorandum number 03-23-24 in the total amount of $146,480,254.
Thank you very much, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Colleagues, we're going to move on to item 3.01, that's Focus 2024 Strategic Plan Update on Chronic Absenteeism. This is an action item. Before I open the action item, if there is anybody who who would like to speak on this item and has not submitted their card, please do so now. Otherwise, public comment, yellow card submission is closed. Let's move on to Dr. Barton. Please take it away.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Mike Barton for the record. This evening, here to present Focus 2024, an update on chronic absenteeism. This is a cumulative report for the data from last school year. With me this evening is Mr. Kevin McPartland, our Assistant Superintendent for the Education Services Division. But trustees, as you may recall, this indicator in our Focus 2024 plan is aligned to safety and engagement. We've been to the board many times to provide quarterly updates. Again, this is a cumulative report, but these are the dates that the presentation has been provided to the trustees. The latest being May 11th, 2023. Our original theory of action, trustees, if we identify root causes for missed school situations, use outside partners to assist with chronic absenteeism efforts, then chronic absenteeism rates will decrease. Also, highlighting the strategies, the high leverage strategies that are in the Focus 2024 plan, there are 3 in front of you this evening that the district is implementing to tackle the chronic absenteeism issues. First, implementing district-wide MTSS to promote students both academically and behaviorally. Implement a data dashboard to analyze student achievement data and early warning indicators to attendance, behavior, and course completion. And then finally, we can't do this alone, increasing the partnerships to expand mental health wraparound services, social workers, school safety personnel, interventionists, and counselors in schools. So trustees, to the data this evening to give again the report on where we are for last school year. The district chronic absenteeism rate was 36%. When you look at that, breaking it down by student group, you have the data in front of you. I will highlight that as we know that these numbers are challenging and we need to continue to work on decreasing chronic absenteeism, another indicator is average daily attendance, which is similar but not the same. We did see as a district a 0.7 percentage point overall increase last year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's statistically significant when you think about all the attendance markers that go into attendance gathering from every employee in our district. And that rate for ADA with our African American student group increased year over year rate, while the district average was 0.7%, that student group increased by 1.7% from the ADA perspective. Again, not the same metric. I just think it's important to highlight the important work that we're doing as a system. We know that we need to do better with chronic absenteeism. When you look at disproportionality, the slide that looks at the 22-23 target by student group, and pardon me, not disproportionality, but our student groups, you can see that our actuals are not meeting target. We do need to reduce these numbers to, again, meet those targets that were originally highlighted in the Focus 2024 plan. And finally, thinking about the gap between our highest and lowest student groups in chronic absenteeism, again, the target for 22-23 was 9.1. We did not meet that target with 28.8. And let me just preface, I should have said this in the very beginning, there's been a footnote on all these data slides as it indicates that the final rate will be validated by the Nevada Department of Education on September 15th, 2023. So what's being presented tonight is technically preliminary. However, we anticipate these numbers will be finalized by NDE very shortly. When we look at chronic absenteeism, we always, trustees, provide context about our partner districts that we look at, inclusive of even Washoe County. We'll continue to tackle this complex problem with outside partners and also learn from other districts on how we can improve chronic absenteeism. When we look at the challenges, successes, lessons learned, we know that we've said this every report, that these are slower than expected rebounds. While the number for chronic absenteeism has improved, it's not dramatically fallen. We can do better, but we know that external factors and supports are there from municipalities and certain entities. However, we always have to look in the mirror as a system on what do we need to enforce to ensure that we're doing our part as the Clark County School District. And when I say that, the challenge is that Regulation 5113 and Regulation 5123 require system compliance. And those talk about specific things. They talk about denial of credit for secondary students that may miss beyond 10 days, or students in elementary school that surpass 20 absences and the potential for retention. We as a system, looking very hard at what we're doing, know that we can do better with system compliance with our own regulations. Also, there is lack of consistent support from multiple agencies. While we have some effort and money coming from the county, for instance, we know that there are complex chronic absenteeism issues outside of the county. They exist in Henderson. They exist all over the valley. And community challenges impact our families with limited support. Successes, to highlight a few this evening: Office of Attendance Enforcement mobilization at middle and high schools experienced the highest chronic absenteeism rate is occurring to provide that differentiated support. Deployment of the attendance officers for mentorship, specifically at middle schools. Lessons learned. Chronic absenteeism impacts everything. We know that it impacts our literacy rates. It impacts graduation, so we know that. Recovery from increased rates will require ongoing comprehensive initiatives. And then finally, we will continue to evaluate the efficiency of our practices to widen our scope of influence and increase effectiveness of the services we do offer. So trustees, I know that we do come with a theory of action. This is a revised theory of action as we continue to tackle this problem from a system standpoint. If we identify root causes for missed school situations, and I know we've had that in the theory of action before, but we really need to take a deep dive with the team and do a root cause analysis on the entire system of what we're missing. Work with multiple agencies to assist with chronic absenteeism. Provide high-quality Tier 1 instruction, Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions system-wide so that our students want to experience the best instruction in all classrooms. And then finally, improve the consistency and implementation of our own policies and regs, inclusive of 5113 and 5123. Then chronic absenteeism rates will continue to decrease. Next steps, trustees. Mr. McPartland will continue to lead our town halls to hear from the students as far as what the needs are regarding what gets them to school, what makes them want to come every day and not become a statistic in the chronic absenteeism rate. We have attendance officer professional learning that was occurring between December 22nd and May 23. The attendance tab in Infinite Campus was deployed in August 23. That is, again, a resource to ensure that we're tracking the efficiency of our own resources, our attendance officers, to see how they're working and interacting with those schools most in need. And then the important thing is complying with our own policies and regs, right? So when we look at the compliance, that next step, we have a lot of strategic messaging. We're working with work groups made up of principals on this enforcement of our own policies with denial of credit, potential retention, and also even education neglect. We know that education neglect involves elementary age students who may not be coming to school, and a first grader may not be at fault for that action or inaction. And so we are going to ensure that education neglect, we continue to do that, but at the end of that pipeline or that work, that outside agencies assist us with parental accountability. And then finally, I close, trustees, with, again, every part of our organization, every part of our valley becoming intimately involved with this effort. Getting kids in school affects everything. We have launched the Everyday Matters campaign to, again, ensure that all know how serious student attendance is on a daily basis. Trustees, that does conclude the report this evening, and the team is ready to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Barton. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues to ask questions. Trustee Guzman.
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. Thank you so much for this report. I remember discussing this with the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, the students that came and discussed this. I just have a couple of questions that have to do with the attendance clerks that go out and they visit. Is that what they're called, attendance clerks, or are they attendance officers?
Attendance officers.
Okay. Okay, so attendance officers. And are we surveying them to find out what they're saying is the reason why the students are not coming to school if they're going out to their homes and trying to bring them into school?
Dr. Barton.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Guzman. Anecdotally, there's not a formal survey that goes to our attendance officers. However, there's interaction from our coordinator over attendance, where anytime there is a visit, we collect that data anecdotally, what they're seeing during home visits, talking to parents. I think some of the issues that we're seeing are environmental issues in the home, food insecurity. We continue to know that the challenges in the community are immense. And again, as we continue to collect that data anecdotally from our frontline attendance officers, we'll again lean on our partners to help us do better.
So there is collaboration between the schools and the parents also. I'm just curious on that.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Guzman, there's definite action on every school's part. They're also tackling their individual efforts. When you think about our attendance officers centrally, we have approximately 30 attendance officers, and there's a lot of ground to cover. So as far as those efforts, we definitely rely on the schools and their frontline staff and administrators to help with that chronic absenteeism and those efforts with families.
So we're understaffed with the attendance officers. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I'm sorry, Trustee, can you repeat the question?
Sure, sorry. So we're understaffed with the attendance officers.
Absolutely.
Is that what I hear
Absolutely.
you say? Okay, thank you.
Forgive me, before you answer that question, security, can you please stand by the back? It seems to be there's some echoing back there that is disrupting this meeting. I'm going to continue to encourage and ask our audience members, we want to hear our presenters. This is a business meeting. If you have a difficult time conducting yourself in the business meeting and continue to interrupt, we will ask you to leave. Again, disruption of a public meeting is cause for removal and trespass. Thank you. Dr. Barton, can you please, do you need the question? You got it? Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Dr. Barton. It's so good to see you. I'm glad, left Arborview and now you're here, Kevin, so it's great to see you here. I wanted to ask you, Dr. Barton, just for people who are listening at home, and I ask you the same question literally every single time, and only because I think it's really important to reiterate. Can you give the definition for chronic absenteeism as we rate by this report?
Dr. Barton?
So I may rely, I want to give the official, I know Mr. Manzi has given it officially on the record several times, so
Yeah.
if Mr. Manzi's available, if I can phone a friend, I'm sorry.
It sounds like we're going to call in Mr. Mr. Manzi.
Mr. Manzi, I apologize. I can ask them my other question too. I only say that it's super important to have that there. I know that people can look it up. I know that sometimes busy parents are not going to look it up, and chronic absenteeism covers a vast majority of students who are having a lot of issues at home, and we want to make sure that we actually have the definition there. And there he is. Yay.
Welcome, Mr. Manzi. Thank you. Trustee Williams? Did you hear the question? No?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Williams, yes, I did hear the question. So looking for the definition of chronic absenteeism. So we're looking at students that missed 50% or more of the day, counting in that definition. And for this final calculation, they're enrolled for 91 or more days when we look at the district overall.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Dr. Barton, I have one question because you mentioned earlier on the food insecurity, why students are missing certain periods of the day, at what certain age, and have you done, I guess, a comparison between the schools that are actually getting the free and reduced lunches to the schools that have a higher percentage of missing students?
Dr. Barton?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Williams. We've done some high-level analysis. I think after September 15th, once we have that validated data, we'll definitely look at those patterns that may emerge at FRL versus non-FRL schools. If we're predicting that, I think that we would see this is impacting non-FRL and FRL schools the same way, the same manner, but we're definitely, after we get that validated data, going to dig into that, Trustee.
Thank you. So it's unfortunate, but it sounds like there's really no correlation between food insecurity and absenteeism right now.
Dr. Barton?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Williams, I think this is complex, right? So you think about there's multiple factors, whether it's food insecurity, there could be issues in the home environment, student mobility, the number of times that they're moving from, say, from first grade to fifth grade that are impacting this indicator. But it's why we also, in the theory of action that's revised, we want to ensure that we stay committed to getting to the root causes, as you indicate. And so we really have to do a deeper dive on the data to find out what those issues might be. We know many of them, but really what are the root causes of why kids in certain zip codes aren't coming to school?
Yeah, and I asked that question not to say that food insecurity is not important, because it absolutely is, because it impacts a majority of our actual county. I say that because I know that CCSD's done a really good job of making sure that most of our schools have free and reduced school lunches. So that's why I say it's very hard to make that correlation to it. So thank you for answering my questions, and thank you for coming on out.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Cavazos, you're up.
Thank you, Madam President. Nice to see you, Dr. Barton, Dr. Hensel, and started to say Principal McPartland, but caught myself there. Do we have any idea district-wide what the percentage of compliance with 5113 has been in the recent past? I'm not going to set a time frame there, just kind of throwing it out there.
Dr. Barton?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Cavazos, compliance has been limited. If we, anecdotally, talking to guidance and counseling and finding out from schools, secondary schools specifically, in relationship to denial of credit, it's about a 50%, till this point in time, about a 50% of schools compliant. And again, that's just anecdotal information through guidance and counseling.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barton. I have a second part to that very briefly. We're talking about, implementing 5113 more consistently, because I hear, from teachers, from parents, and there's confusion, especially if there's parents that have kids in different schools and they're getting mixed messaging. So how are we going to go about making sure that we have that consistency of implementation throughout our district? Otherwise, we're left with the teachers and the parents having the mixed messaging and not showing, what's going on.
Dr. Barton?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara. Trustee Cavazos, we're not doing this alone. We're working with a group of secondary administrators on implementation for consistency. They've asked us clearly that they need some assistance from their, they've been hearing this from their teachers, that they need tools and resources to help with that consistent implementation. So we're working with a small group. We've already started convening that working group. We met about 2 weeks ago, but that's going to be a regular meeting, again, to build those tools for consistency, so there's not that variation from school to school.
So I hear, thank you so much, Dr. Barton. So what I hear you saying is starting with a small group, then we're going to be generalizing out to the larger areas of the district so that everybody is covered and everybody knows what is expected in implementation.
Dr. Jara?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Trustee Cavazos, we're working with a small group, but team's working with a small group of principals to work in kind of best practices and implementation. I want to go and let the board know that this started with conversation when I was working with a group of teachers this past spring and summer around the grading, and there was a certain schools that teachers were concerned about the implementation of the policy. So when I came back and worked with the team, and then it was kind of shifting from when we were saying to kids, you know, with COVID, stay home and not come, and concern our teachers, our staff was concerned about kids' credit. But then you had other schools that were doing different things. So it started from roundtable conversations with teachers that I brought to the administrator so we can address it consistently across the board. And if I can address some of the root cause issues, it goes by different, it's separate, it could be a separate zip code, different issues. Because we also have communities where kids are missing schools because they're going on vacation. Because we hear that, and we've heard some of that as well, that now that our teachers have done such great work about putting things online, where kids can go on vacation and handle their education and turn it in through Canvas, but it's still, the state has a requirement on chronic absenteeism. So as Dr. Barton mentioned, it's a very complex and layered approach. So we're helping our principals, actually they're helping us put a consistent message, because high school and middle school is totally different than elementary school.
Thank you very much for the clarification from everybody. So does it basically boil down to, is it still 8 on block scheduling for the middle and high schools and 10 absences for regular schedule? Is that still accurate?
Dr. Barton?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, that's accurate, trustee. So there's definitely there's difference with the block scheduling as far as the numbers. So the 8 is, that's roughly the calculation that comes to denial of credit for the 10 for a regular semester or regular schedule at school.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate the theory of action as far as addressing the root causes and spreading a wider net, so to speak. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. Is there any information on how many of these students take the school bus?
Dr. Barton?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Zamora, I don't have that with me this evening, but we can definitely research that as far as if there's any information or trends we can do that in our root cause analysis, but I don't have it with me this evening.
Okay, thank you. I have another question, sorry. Who attends these home visits?
Yes, Dr. Barton, forgive me, yes.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Zamora. So the home visits, there's multiple home visits that happen. There's school-based home visits where you might have counselors, teachers, administrators rolling up their sleeves to visit the campuses in that community, whether it's at Valley High School. Centrally, you have attendance officers that may go out and do those home visits. We have wraparound services centrally that are made up of social workers, safe school professionals that go out and do those home visits. So it's a layered approach, as Dr. Jara mentioned, where we have school-based personnel that do those home visits every day, every hour of every day. Centrally, we deploy, not to all because it's a resource issue, but we deploy out to the highest need schools with the highest number of chronically absent students.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Trustee Bustamante Adams?
Thank you, Madam President. So just a couple of questions, Dr. Barton. So on the data, and on my screen, it's page 7. I'm not sure. It says chronic absenteeism rate, progress, and results. So just for my edification, for the district-wide, it has gone down from 39.8 to 36.
That's
so
correct.
I mean, it's not much, but we're headed in the right direction, that going down. And then for the other categories of students by ethnicity, it continues to go down for every single group, right? Am I reading that? Okay. All right. I know there's a lot of work to do, but I think that that is some progress. So my second question is the partnerships, especially with the local municipalities. I know that they are craving to understand and to work and be a partner. Can you share if any progress has been made in that area to build a better partnership with the local municipalities and their elected officials?
Dr. Jara?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Trustee Bustamante, is a great question. 2 weeks ago, I believe, we had our region superintendent present at the city of Henderson, which aligning our campaign on everyday matters, because about a month and a half ago, President Garcia Morales and I met with the mayors of North Las Vegas, city of Henderson. The county commission was also involved, and city of Mesquite, about really how do we tackle the chronic absenteeism. So the message to Trustee Cavazos, the message is consistent across all the municipalities. So yes, very encouraged from that meeting 2 weeks ago in the city. So the follow-up, as they want to be great partners, all of them, is to say, well, what's working, so what can we do more of? And then what we need to change. I know that this was on the agenda last August, and we had to pull it, but the county was ready to come and present with us as a partner as well. So something that it's got legs, moving in the right direction.
Thank you. And then, Madam President, my last question, Dr. Barton, is that there's other entities like communities and schools, JAGS for Nevada graduates that are doing their part, because I know I attended in one of the schools, Wynn Elementary. Their target was the chronic absenteeism, and these were first graders, right? And so what type of, is there a consistent relationship to work with them, or is there anything being done to build that partnership?
Dr. Barton?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Bustamante Adams. All of our partners are critical. You highlighted several that are rallying around this metric. Others to mention Boys Town, other wraparound services, Invo, Progressus, Hazel Health, all of them know what we're trying to tackle as far as social emotional indicators and chronic absenteeism. So that's an ongoing conversation that they know what our high leverage metrics are to move as a system.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for the information. You touched on this a little bit. I understand the need to have consequences, right? You're not going to really get any gains without some sort of consequences. So those consequences you talked about were legal consequences that could happen from keeping your kid home from school, and then denial of credit at the high school level. My question is, what strategies are you considering to ensure that there's not a disproportionate negative impact to our highest need students?
Dr. Barton?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Brooks. It's a great question. So when you think about denial of credit as a for instance, we need to be very nimble as a system. So I think traditionally when students, let's say at some of those schools where the enforcement was high, they would sit in the class for the rest of the semester, but at the end of the day, the child knew that they were probably getting denied credit. We need to look at other options, and that's what we're doing with this group of principals that we're working with. Are there other options through, for example, Apex that may assist that child with credit retrieval in real time? So that definitely has come to the forefront of the conversation as we've talked to principals, knowing that this enforcement can create some concerning numbers system-wide, but that's where centrally we need to work to provide other options for those students to, again, get the credit that they need to graduate from high school.
Thank you. Madam President, if there are no members of the public signed up for public comment, I'm willing to make a motion.
Thank you. I'd like to just share a couple notes before you make your motion, may I? Thank you. I'll come back to you. I'm personally encouraged to see the great work that's starting to take place and continues to take place, to make improvements in chronic absenteeism. I'm encouraged by the Everyday Matters campaign and the support that we are seeking from various entities and also community partners. I am encouraged also to hear about the overall communication to standardize and messaging, along with ensuring we keep systems in place, a system compliance of our students, while also ensuring we help them meet their needs and ultimately graduate from high school successfully. So just a note of gratitude. Thank you. Thank you to our parents who are also listening to help ensure that our students are in classroom learning so that they can continue to be successful in their academic careers. I know personally I like when I'm able to take vacations, I try to schedule them around the spring break, holiday breaks, and long weekends, just simply because we all need breaks, and it's important to do that. And I also want to take note that I do appreciate the attendance, piece on Infinite Campus. I can see very clearly here by quarter when I open up the application on Infinite Campus Parent. I see that it's broken down by quarters and by class, and both absent and tardy. I appreciate that format to help me keep track of my own, help me stay accountable and make sure my kid gets to school on time. Okay. Trustee Brooks, I think we're ready for the motion.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to accept the report presented under item 3.01.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Williams?
I second.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Brooks, a second by Trustee Williams. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 7-0. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation today. We're going to move on to item 4.01. That's the notice of intent by Clark County School District Regulation 6122. This is an action item, and before we continue on 4.01, if there is anyone in the audience who has not had a moment to complete a yellow public speaker card for this particular item, please do so now. Okay, we have Ms. Cardenas. Are you speaking on this item? No? Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure we don't miss your card. All right, we do not have any yellow cards for this item, so let's go ahead and get started with the presentation. Dr. Mansell?
Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Dustin Mansell, Chief Academic Officer for the record. Today I'm joined by Elena Kreiner-Wilson, our Assistant Superintendent of the Curriculum and Instruction Division, and Dr. Monica Cortez, our Chief of Health and Student Services. Today, we are here to provide a notice of intent to amend Clark County School District Regulation 6122, titled Instructional Plans, and Clark County School District Regulation 6122.1, titled Instructional Plans Special Education Courses. Regulation 6122 was last revised by the Board of School Trustees in 1981. There have been no revisions to Regulation 6122.1 since its adoption by the Board of School Trustees in 1992. The proposed amendments will align instructional plans with the Nevada Academic Content Standards, Nevada Educator Performance Framework, and the Clark County School District's teaching and learning expectations. The proposed amendments will bring a common language, consistent message, and greater clarity for lesson planning across the Clark County School District. The proposed amendments are intended to support our educators with developing and delivering high-quality, standards-based instruction in our classrooms. Ms. Kreiner-Wilson will provide the proposed amendments regarding Regulation 6122, and Dr. Cortez will provide the proposed amendments regarding Regulation 6122.1. At this time, I will hand over the presentation to my co-presenters.
Welcome.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, for the record, Elena Kreiner-Wilson, Assistant Superintendent of the Curriculum and Instruction Division. The reference material for item 4.01, Notice of Intent, Clark County School District Regulation 6122, outlines the proposed deletions and additions to the regulation. I will read the proposed language for Regulation 6122. Roman numeral 1. The Nevada Academic Content Standards serve as the basis for instruction for each teacher. Section A. Teachers shall develop instructional plans consistent with curricular and instructional requirements as specified by the Nevada Academic Content Standards and the Clark County School District, CCSD, scope and goals, pacing guides, curriculum guides, and content area instructional frameworks. The development of specific teaching strategies and methods are the responsibility of the teacher and shall be consistent with the CCSD teaching and learning expectations and instructional practices outlined on the Nevada Educator Performance Framework. Section B, teachers shall be provided with appropriate forms and/or instructions for recording instructional plans. Roman numeral 2. The initial requirement of instructional planning is to develop a long-range plan by the semester or year aligned with the CCSD pacing guides. Daily plans are to be developed from the long-range plan. Section A. Plans for daily instruction shall be prepared at least 1 week in advance and should be specific enough to provide adequate direction for a substitute teacher. Daily instructional plans will include the following. Number 1, a statement of the standards in terms of concepts and skills. Number 2, learning intentions aligned to the standards for lesson planning and daily instruction. Number 3, success criteria aligned to the learning intentions, demonstrating what students must know and be able to do at the end of the lesson. Number 4, a brief description of the procedures aligned to Tier 1 instructional materials and/or other resources used for the lesson that align to the standards and support student mastery of the standards. Number 5, an indication of student grouping patterns and independent activities. Number 6, appropriate differentiation and scaffolding strategies to support student mastery of the standards. Number 7, a description of assessment, including formative and/or summative. Roman numeral 3, a teacher's instructional plans must be readily available for review at any time by administrators. Roman numeral 4, a teacher's instructional plans must be maintained for a minimum of 3 years from the school year in which the records were developed. A teacher's instructional plans may be destroyed in a non-secure manner, such as deleting or recycling at any time after the minimum retention period. Thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara. For the record, Monica Cortez, Chief of Health and Student Services. The reference material for item 4.02, Notice of Intent, Clark County School District Regulation 6122.1, outlines the proposed deletions and additions to the regulation. I will read the proposed language for Regulation 6122.1. Instructional plans, specially designed instruction. Roman numeral 1. The Nevada Academic Content Standards, Nevada Academic Content Standard Connectors, and Individualized Education Programs, IEP, serve as the basis for instruction for each teacher in a special education program. Section A. Teachers shall develop instructional plans consistent with curricular and instructional requirements as specified by each student's IEP, as appropriately aligned to the specific standard, grade level, and/or course. The development of specific teaching strategies and methods are the responsibility of the teacher and shall be consistent with the Clark County School District teaching and learning expectations and instructional practices outlined on the Nevada Education Performance Framework. Section B. Teachers shall be provided with appropriate forms and/or instructions for recording instructional plans. Roman numeral 2. The initial requirement of instructional planning is to develop a long-range plan for each student receiving special education services. Daily plans are to be developed from long-range plan. Section A. Plans for daily instruction shall be prepared at least 1 week in advance and should be specific enough to provide adequate direction for a substitute teacher. Daily instructional plans will include the following. Number 1, a statement of the standard in terms of concepts and skills aligned to each student's IEP. Roman numeral 2, Section A, Numbers 2 through 7 are the same as Regulation 6122, as well as Roman numeral 3 and Roman numeral 4. Thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, for the record, Dustin Mansell, Chief Academic Officer. Thank you for this opportunity to share the updates regarding Regulation 6122 and 6122.1 proposed updates. At this time, we'll pause and take any questions from the board.
Thank you. I just want to note for the record that we are hearing we've just heard the presentation of 4.01 and 4.02 on our agenda. Okay? All right. Let's see, colleagues, are there any questions at this time? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion, and we'll do one at a time. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. I do want to make the motion, but I just have one quick question, and it has to do with lesson plans. In 1B of the policy, it says instructional plans will be retained. Will they be retained in curriculum engine? Where will they be retained?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Dustin Mansell, for the record. After the 1 year of use, the principal is required to retain those records for up to 3 years. If they're in curriculum engine, that is where teachers can continue to work on their goals or their lesson plans. Some teachers continue to use Google. They use Canvas. Some teachers will record their lesson plans in hard copy, and that is okay. Teachers can continue to use the strategies and techniques that they use to record their lesson plans, and then at the end of the year, the principal is responsible for collecting those lesson plans and retaining them.
Great. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have a question?
I believe thank you, Trustee Guzman. I'll come back to you. Trustee Cavazos?
I just wanted to second Trustee Guzman's motion.
All right, let's make it official. Trustee Guzman?
Do I do it for both 4.01 and 4.02?
Could you do them one at a time, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I would not mind. I'd like to make a motion to pass the notice of intent for the Clark County School District Regulations 6122.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Guzman. Trustee Cavazos?
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Guzman, a second by Trustee Cavazos. Please cast your vote. Thank you. That motion passes 7-0. We're moving on to item 4.02, and similar to 4.01, we did not have public comment for either of these items. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. I would like to move 4.02. I'd like to pass 4.02, the notice of intent for the Clark County School District Regulation 6122.1.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Zamora?
I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Guzman, a second by Trustee Zamora. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much for your presentation and for your work every day. All right, item 4.03, we are going to move on now to the legislative session overview. This item is an action item. This is not an action item, forgive me. This is a report and discussion on the legislative issues which may affect education, including but not limited to legislation passed by the Nevada State Legislature during the 82nd legislative session. We are going to turn it over to Mr. Todd Story and his team. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam President, trustees, Superintendent Jara, Todd Story, Chief Communications Officer, for the record. We are here to go over the legislative session, talk to you a little bit about how we started off. We had first the platform that was adopted by the board almost a year ago, and actually it was a year ago. Then we'll give you a brief overview. Then we'll go into the priority area bills that we had that you supported, that were the BDRs that we carried to the legislature in Carson City. Then we'll highlight some of the issues in a little more detail, the lessons learned, and where we go from here. So I'll turn it over to Government Relations Director Patricia Haddad.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Patricia Haddad, for the record, Director of Government Relations. So want to start out by grounding in, can we have the clicker, please? Thank you. Want to start out by grounding in the legislative platform that you all approved on October 13th of 2022. That is focused on a couple of different domains, of course, student learning, workforce, governance and transparency, mental health, health, and school safety, and some particular items underneath there, but those were the high-level topic areas of a priority by the board for the platform. In addition to that, two bill drafts. Clark County School District, of course, receives 2 bill drafts each legislative session. The topic areas that were approved by this board in August of 2022 included school board trustee governance and governance requirements, and then Senate Bill 47, that was Senate Bill 65 regarding trustee requirements, and then Senate Bill 47 regarding improving the conditions, working conditions for folks across the public education sector. We'll talk a little bit more about how these bills in particular fared a little bit later on in the presentation, but again, grounding in sort of the parameters that the Board of Trustees set out for our team as we were engaging throughout the legislative session. In addition to that, the board endorsed in December of 2022 the Invest in Education funding priorities established by the Nevada Association of School Superintendents, which are outlining, again, funding priorities across public education. This was also endorsed by other boards of trustees throughout the state. So we were in line with our colleagues across Nevada. So starting with the parameters that you guys outlined. So what did the session look like in relation to the government relations team? What did it look like on the ground? So we are a relatively new team for CCSD. This was, I think, this composition of our team, our first session representing Clark County School District. So, of course, Mr. Story, myself, my colleague, Mr. Waugh, who will be weighing in on a couple of slides in a moment here, and then in addition to that, Sasha Sutcliffe-Stevenson, who was our contract lobbyist with SSS Public Affairs. Now, our work really, and the frame and the lens by which we approached each day started with that baseline of what were the priorities outlined in the platform by the Board of Trustees, communicating and collaborating internally with our subject matter experts as well as with other stakeholders to inform what the potential impact of policy might look like, and then tracking and engaging on that policy, of course, with policymakers, and looking to drive, again, the platform that the trustees have identified, as well as ensuring that students are at the center of any decision that is being made in relation to education policy in our state. I also just want to pause for a moment on our government relations department objective, and you'll hear this as a theme throughout our discussion tonight. Specifically, building and sustaining relationships with our government partners from across every level, agencies and elected officials, to increase, like we said, that student-centric public policies that support the district's unique needs. And I just wanted to pause there because that's new, and again, really driving home the fact that a lot of our work is grounded in fostering really healthy, good relationships with our decision makers and our partners throughout the state, and up in Carson City and here in Southern Nevada as well. And just briefly, throughout the session, we had weekly meetings with chairs of the education committees. We participated in regular policy discussions on more than a weekly basis with a group of partners from across the state. We ended up at over 100 committee meetings throughout the session, and we are, again, ultimately, we're focused on prioritizing good policy as we approach the work, which I think we were really proud of. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Nathaniel Waugh, who will walk us through some facts and figures about the session.
Thank you, Madam President, Trustees, Superintendent Jara. Nathaniel Waugh, Government Relations Coordinator for the record. So just some by the numbers for the session. The 82nd session started on February 6th. of 2023 and adjourned sine die on June 6th. Just after midnight, we saw after that some unfinished business, so the 34th and 35th special sessions took place between the 6th of June and the 14th of June. We saw 1,234 bill draft requests submitted. Of those, 1,040 became bills that were introduced. The government relations team tracked about 200 of those, and approximately 85 of those bills that were enacted into law have some impact on the school district. So I'll turn it back over to Ms. Headed.
So thinking back to the Patricia Haddad, Director of Government Relations. So thinking back to those priority areas as identified in the Board of Trustees platform, we had those major domains. So we're going to check in a bit on how did we do on student learning and how did we do in the workforce domain. Quickly, though, I do want to orient you to the key that's at the bottom. You'll see next to the selection of bills, and to be clear, this is not a holistic list of every single bill that could have possibly fit under here, but really just focusing on those highlights, some of those key areas. So the key at the bottom, the green checks that you'll see next to those bills indicates that there was alignment with the trustee platform and that piece of legislation and that bill centered students. The yellow exclamation point that you'll see is pieces of policy that were aligned or are aligned with the platform outlined by the Board of Trustees, but there may be some unclear or provisions or some interpretation challenges that need to be worked through in order for that implementation to move forward. And then the red X you'll see was not aligned to the platform priorities. And then throughout, you'll also see this little dollar sign with the cross through it. That indicates is something that was an unfunded mandate or ultimately would result in a loss of revenue. So you'll see that in a couple of different slides here. So just to briefly touch on some key bills across the domain. So in student learning, Senate Bill 503 is the bill that funded public education in Nevada, and this is where we saw that historic increase in funds as well as additional towards K-12 public education, as well as some additional funds particularly earmarked for special education students. And then AB 400, which was the governor's omnibus bill and had some different focuses, specifically looking at early childhood literacy, literacy readiness, has some provisions in there around the Commission on School Funding, which we'll touch on a little bit later. But that one is something that we were supportive of. On the workforce side, just some that I would highlight, SB 434, which requires substitute and temporary employees to participate in PERS. That is one that we are seeing an unfunded mandate around for the district to cover the cost of these individuals engaging in PERS if they hit that threshold as established, and recognizing that there are some immense administrative challenges aligned to that one. So just to highlight there. Moving on to governance and transparency. So you'll see a nice little laundry list of a handful of bills. Those are all focused on district oversight, transparency, and accountability. We'll circle back on those in another slide, but also, of course, Board of Trustees is familiar with AB 175, which expands the board from 7 to 11 members, and SB 282. So SB 282 has a couple of components to it as well, but I think worth highlighting is that it requires school strategic budgets to maintain a carry forward balance of not more than 5%. So 5% is the limit. There are 24 months after the school year ends to spend anything above and beyond that 5%. Anything that is left over in that school strategic budget reverts to the education stabilization account. That is an account that is held at the state level. So those dollars that were initially earmarked for students in Clark County, in particular in Clark County School District, would revert back to the state for redistribution and not particularly in our county and for our students in particular. There's also some provisions there that makes changes to the voting composition of school organizational teams and the ways in which school organizational teams engage on the approval of plans of operation as well as principal selection at that school site. And then in mental health, health and school safety, AB 330 and AB 285 was a topic of lots of attention throughout the session. Those bills were essentially both passed and ended up being more like partner bills and are focused on student discipline and sort of changes to the sort of existing rules that were put into place, as well as some changes to restorative practices procedures. So touching on those CCSD bill requests, unfortunately, neither did make it through the entire legislative process. However, Senate Bill 47, this was the one that was focused on improving working conditions, did pass Senate Education Work Session, which we will take as a win. It was voted on majority, at least in that committee. And that had three main components. So one component of that was focused on a task force looking at the working conditions, like we said, of public education employees. There were some existing task forces that focused on specific employee groups, but we recognized that there were some employee groups that were not being addressed in the question of recruitment and retention in these formal task forces that are administered at a state level. So that, while Senate Bill 47 didn't pass, that component of our bill did essentially get rolled into Senate Bill 71 to be inclusive of, to ensure that the task force on the retention and recruitment also includes support staff. The two other components of that Senate Bill 47 was looking at eliminating teacher licensure fees and specifically removing the financial burden of licensure fees and shifting that away from the educators themselves. In addition to that, clarifying the definition of teacherage in Nevada revised statute, because that currently doesn't exist. So that was Senate Bill 47. On Senate Bill 65, that did receive an initial hearing, and that had two sort of primary components to it. One was establishing a minimum standard around any sort of financial malfeasance or crimes against children, so ensuring that an individual that would be interested in serving on this body can sort of pass that minimum standard, and then also infusing accountability into training requirements. I will say that ultimately these bills were not prioritized by the committee, but as we were having conversations throughout the session, we did get a lot of positive feedback on sort of the need and necessity of some of these different components, but again, it wasn't ultimately pushed through or prioritized by the committees. To talk a little bit the vetoed bills, I'm going to pass it back over to Mr. Waugh.
Thank you, Madam President, Trustees, Superintendent Jara. So Governor Lombardo set a record this session by vetoing 75 bills in his first session. There's a list here of some of the education bills that were vetoed, including appropriation for universal free breakfast, subsidies for certain substitute teachers, provisions of collective bargaining, local school precincts, employees of school districts, and summer school. And one thing to note with these, and just to give some context, is depending on the makeup of the 2025 session, we could see any of these come back for possible overrides, depending on how the legislature chooses to respond to those. And so the next slide is, I'll just kind of touch on the bills that did not meet deadline. As you can see, most of these contain either an unfunded mandate or a revenue loss for the district. The one that I will highlight here is SB 48, which was a diversion of school district allocation of air pollution fines and fees. These air quality funds that we receive from the county go toward science education and professional development for educators. And so we were able to so the committees ultimately decided not to remove that funding from us and give it to the county, and so that was certainly a win. But as you can see, these bills that did not meet various deadlines for other reasons. Most of them would have ended up in an unfunded mandate or loss of revenue for the district. Thank you.
Patricia Haddad, Director of Government Relations. So digging in a little bit on these two issue areas, starting with student discipline. So like we had mentioned, AB 330 and AB 285 were really pieces of what ultimately became partner legislation, looking at sort of the same issues around restorative practices and student discipline. Ultimately, there were changes to age requirements for suspensions, expulsions, permanent expulsions, some changes to temporary alternative placements and the appeals process for students. There was also an addition of some discipline data reporting requirements, specifically looking at any types of disproportionality that may exist across different types of student groups. And then some changes to the requirements for districts as far as progressive discipline plans that incorporate restorative justice practices. One thing to note is that these were two complex, long pieces of legislation that needed to be interpreted, and we recognize that. However, of course, as you know, school started on August 7th, and we received initial guidance from the Department of Education on the implementation of these bills on August 2nd, 2023. So we're currently working on an addendum to the Code of Conduct, and there are ongoing sort of guidance and workshops that are coming out of the Department of Education, as a state, not just Clark County School District, but as districts across the state and public school students across the state, as these changes become integrated. And then accountability and transparency. So there were a number of different bills that were passed that are looking at how students are performing, the operations of the school district, as well as essentially the sort of community input and sort of general satisfaction. So I'll just sort of briefly run through these, but AB 399 established an education accountability subcommittee of the interim finance committee. We have not seen that interim finance committee create this subcommittee quite yet, but that's something that we're tracking closely. AB 517 establishes a new type of legislative performance audit. That's inclusive of Clark County School District, Washoe County School District, State Public Charter School Authority, as well as some rural districts, and that will occur every 4 years. In addition to that, SB 98 enables the state superintendent of public instruction to establish accountability metrics for all districts across the state. AB 400 was one of these bills that expanded the scope of an existing commission. So the Commission on School Funding will now what's written into statute, and in particular, we'll be looking at the academic progress of students since the implementation of the people-centered funding formula, people-centered funding plan, including any changes in performance as a result of additional money provided through the people-centered funding plan. And then last, there is the Senate Bill 425, which is creating the Innovation and Excellence in Education Committee. So each of these, again, looking at, I imagine there will be some overlapping components of what it is that these individual bodies or commissions are looking at. And however, there is not necessarily a through line between all of these different bodies, and so it's really incumbent on us as the district to continue to tell our story and ensure that continuity exists as we're continuing to share and as we embark on this conversation around accountability and transparency and sharing with our community. So wrapping up here, second to last slide, lessons learned and opportunities. So I think a couple of different things here. So first, I think it's important to note that there were no less than 10 bills that were specifically, singling out the Clark County School District, though of course, as you know, we are one of 17 school districts throughout the state. I just think that's important context to recognize of sort of the environment and sort of what the policy discussions look like in Carson City as the Clark County School District representative. And what we found is somewhere in the range of half of our state legislators, our senators and our assembly people, either graduated from the Clark County School District themselves, they have children or family that have attended or worked at Clark County School District or worked themselves at the district. And I think that that really speaks to a lot of the energy that exists, right, and the passion that exists around CCSD, and maybe can speak a little bit to why there is this sort of scope of bills that are looking particularly at one school district as opposed to all school districts throughout the state. We also learned that relationship building is critical, and fostering those relationships during the interim is truly key. I came on with the district in September of last year. It was a pretty short runway between September and February and the beginning of the legislative session to orient and ensure that that groundwork is laid, and that is a priority. That is something that we're looking very closely at and working diligently throughout this next interim and of course beyond. And then, of course, developing avenues to activate more voices that represent CCSD, diverse, knowledgeable, activating a diverse and knowledgeable constituency to share their experiences as well, and ensure that there's holistic viewpoints coming to the table to share the great things and the challenges with Clark County School District. And then finally, so what is next? You heard about those 85 some odd bills of some sort of impact, be that just monitoring to see what our partners and our friends are doing and how they're implementing, to massive changes in student discipline policies. There's a couple of things that have to happen. First is on a number of those bills, they need to go through a regulatory process with the Department of Education. Those are ongoing. And those processes need to occur in order for our work to be able to move forward. But of course, we are doing adoption and implementation monitoring, looking at what's going really well, and also what are some of those realized or anticipated risks or challenges that may come about as a result of the policies that were passed. Of course, participating with those interim committees that you heard about, and of course, many others, the commissions, the task forces throughout the interim, and then we're looking to share a quarterly policy update via newsletter to talk about what some of these things look like as the interim continues forward, and being able to share that information with our community, because I think they're interested. So that is about all that I've got, Mr. Short.
Madam President, trustees, any questions that you might have for the government relations team?
Thank you, Mrs. Story. Thank you to your team here presenting. I'm going to turn it over to Trustee Zamora, who's first in the queue.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, team. It's great seeing y'all up there. I know it was difficult, but I really want to see how, I think it's more of a comment. I hope to see you all be involved with the, interim meetings, because there's a lot of things that happen during that. I believe that one of the bills that did pass that we're not supporting, those conversations had started years ago in 2021, and it would have been nice to see, I know we didn't have a team, but somebody there in the room. There was just an IFC meeting not so long ago, too. I think there's a clear it's one thing to tune in and watch a meeting on TV, but it's also a different thing to be in person and just being there in the room, because there's a lot of things that happen that you don't catch on the microphone. So I hope to see you all in the room, and I know it's going to be tedious, and I know it's going to be, a lot, but I think it will make a difference. For sure.
Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Trustee Brooks.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to staff. Sorry that I was not able to attend my briefing, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have a cost estimate of the financial impact of unfunded mandates? Okay.
It sounds like Dr. Jara, you would like to respond to that?
Madam President, members of the board, we can certainly get that information, because I know there was times that we shared that with the governor's office as he was reviewing, and with the legislative chair in both houses, so we can compile it all for the unfunded mandates by the state.
Thank you. I think it's important for the public to know that even though there is an infusion of cash coming to the district, there's also an infusion of costs. and they are not necessarily costs that this community prioritized directly, and I think it's important that they understand that. I have some questions about this accountability and transparency piece. I remember last legislative session, I think it was last session, there was a bill to actually get rid of some of these committees, and they were trying to redirect some of this work so that there was a clearer line of accountability at the state level. It seems this session we did the opposite of that, and now we have these additional committees. So my question is about some of the responsibilities that are outlined here. Like one of them where it says there's an education accountability subcommittee. How is that different than the job of the Department of Education?
Mr. Story?
Sure, Madam President, Trustees, Superintendent Jara. So what we have found through what Ms. Haddad said earlier, the through line for a lot of these committees isn't exactly clear. Trying to figure out whose responsibility is what, who is going to ultimately be responsible for looking at the accountability measures that school districts are going to have to operate under, and then who ultimately will hold school districts to account. I think that some of that is undetermined at this point. We would hope that these agencies that are involved in doing this will talk to each other and come up with that order so that it's more clear for the school districts in order to be able to comply.
Okay. And on that note, this bill that enables the state superintendent to establish accountability metrics, how is that different than their job currently? It isn't their job to establish accountability metrics?
Madam President, Trustees, Superintendent Jara, Todd Story, for the record, yes. It is part of the job of Nevada Department of Education, State Board of Education, to establish those metrics. I'm not sure wholly how this is different from what they're currently required to do.
Thank you. Just, it's a little unclear for me, somebody who works in accountability and recognizes that they already have that responsibility, so it's just a little muddy for me. But I appreciate, maybe you're not the person to answer this question. I appreciate the information.
I believe Dr. Jara has a comment. Dr. Jara?
I do. Madam President, members of the board, if I may, I think what I'm seeing currently in conversations that we've had as superintendents with the state superintendent, my understanding with this is Senate Bill 98, where the governor and his office is working with the State Department to set the metrics around the infusion of dollars. So as has been shared with superintendents at this point is that obviously his key components are with literacy, read by grade 3. So what are the cut points? So it's just really adding structure. What I'm hopeful, and I think we're all hopeful, is that whatever is said by NDE, we're all going to follow and not go into multiple directions. That's what I'm fearful, but I'm hopeful that we all, as a 17 districts and the charters, are in the right direction.
Thank you, Dr. Jara. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for that clarification. I'm hopeful also because I think that you really can't improve academic outcomes at the state level unless everybody's focusing on the same thing. I think everybody knows that. The problem is when you have multiple committees doing the same work, you're almost certain not to get there. So I'm hopeful, but I'm also realistic. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. This is really more of a comment. Since I already tortured all of you guys during our very thorough briefing, thank you again for presenting this for the benefit of the public. And I just want to say in an effort to kind of move us along, if there aren't any other questions, I see there are, I just wanted to thank you for the very thorough review and explaining the different categories and commend you for the part that had to do with the relationships and building up your team. So I really appreciate that, and that's all I have, and I don't have any questions.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you again for this presentation, and I won't be as picky about all the different bills as I was on my briefing, but there are a couple of things that I wanted to find out. Just kind of how you're going to move the pathway forward, because when I started on this board, we had a team that did create relationships with our legislators, and we were able to pass both our bills. And so I'm just asking how we're going to build those relationships moving forward, because I know that there are a few of them outside right now. And so I'm just curious how we're moving that forward.
Thank you, Patricia Haddad. So a number of different ways. I think tactically speaking, having touch points with as many legislators really as possible, identifying our champions, but doing that really early and doing that very often. Open lines of communication on a sort of constant basis, truly. Bringing them in also, I think a lot of folks, like we said, we know that a number of them have personal experience with the Clark County School District in some fashion. Right. But also being able to provide some additional insights, right, maybe beyond what their own personal experience to that point has looked like, being able to see some of the beautiful facilities throughout the county, being able to see some of the really complex and frankly amazing operations that are occurring each and every day to ensure that students are being fed, that transportation is occurring on a daily, right? All of these pieces. So ensuring that exposure exists, and like I said, I think communicating often, early and throughout the entire session to ensure that their folks are familiar with who we are, what our priorities are. We can understand what their priorities are as well, and be able to find that really that nexus point to be able to drive really good policy. Because at the end of the day, this is really, and as you all know, absolutely more than anyone, I would imagine, this is focused on, and we are focused on improving the education system for our students, ensuring that they can be successful and ensuring that the system exists for them. That is at the core of what we're doing and where we want to find that nexus point. Thank you.
Madam President, if I could just jump in real quickly. Trustee Guzman, if you could look back at the objective, I think the key is in the objective for the department, and that is the relationship building that needs to occur. So this team having been assembled not quite a year ago, having that head start this time is going to make all the difference. We have a good breadth of relationships with a number of legislators, and we will use that to our advantage. We appreciate their passion around education. We just need to make sure that the relational piece is there and is part of that as we develop legislation together.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. My comments are brief and really focus on, as I reflect on this legislative session. I'm grateful for the team who had a short runway and yet still was incredibly laser focused on our students and ensuring there's bills that are passed and advocating for bills that are passed to ensure that they are focused on for the best for our students and families. Simply in reflecting on this presentation, I can't help but to think about the core work of our organization, which is student outcomes and student learning. And when I think about the priority areas that are highlighted here on section 8, page 8 out of 18, we only had 4 bills that were passed focused on student learning in our state. And as a parent, as a contributor to the community, I want all of our students to successfully, across the state. I mean, I happen to have the privilege of being on the Clark County School Board, but I'm personally invested in the student learning of all students in Nevada, and the legislature has the power and authority to focus bills that are dedicated to improving student learning. We are often lambasted in the media by or our community, there's a lack of information sometimes, and we have to do a better job at communicating rankings and what goes into the rankings on the national level for Nevada. There's like, oftentimes we hear we're the last in education, or we're 18th in education. There's a lot of information that goes into that. I know Dr. Jara has shared that these rankings will be coming out soon again, but like the legislature has a really unique opportunity and position to help us really improve those rankings on the national level through legislation that is positive and ultimately benefits students and families. And I'm hopeful that future legislative sessions will have more focus on student learning, because this is ultimately our workforce, our economy, and we will all benefit tremendously from increased focus and priority on student learning for our system. So thank you for the work that you've done. I'm grateful to legislators who focused on student learning and ultimately helping support our system at large to help our students and families. This is not an action item, colleagues, and I don't see anybody else in the queue. Incredibly grateful for your time. We are going to move on, colleagues, to item 4.04. That is the annual application, the 2023 annual application cycle for proposed charter schools. This is a possible action item, and before I continue on to item 4.04, if there's someone in the audience who would like to speak on this item but however has not, please come in and submit a yellow public speaker card. I don't see any cards being submitted at this time. Dr. Martin.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara. This evening, I'm here with Mr. Dan Tafoya from the Office of School Choice. He will be providing an update on the 2023 annual application cycle for proposed charter schools. With your permission, Madam President, I'll transition to Mr. Tafoya.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Tafoya.
Thank you, Dr. Barton. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, esteemed board members, superintendent, and staff. For the record, Dan Tafoya, Director, Office of School Choice. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present to you this evening. I will now refer you to the slides on the screen. As a reminder, this is an informational presentation, and the SPCASA will be voting tomorrow on either to approve or deny the applications that we will be looking at tonight. This presentation is based on Assembly Bill 462, which requires the SPCSA to notify districts regarding the process on new charter school applications that have been received by the agency. The slide before you is a brief timeline regarding the process, which started in May when the applications were received. June and August is when the applications were reviewed. August, which is about to end, is when the SPCSA will make the decisions, as I stated earlier. And in September, they will inform the Nevada Department of Education and the public regarding their decisions on these applications to either approve or deny. We're going to spend a little bit of time on this slide. And so the SPCSA now has only one application cycle per year versus having two application cycles during the calendar year from which boards to form may apply. For the 2023 application cycle, there were six applicants. We recently were informed by the SPCSA that the George Washington Carver STEAM Academy has withdrawn their application at this time. So there will only be 5 schools being presented in this presentation and to the SPCSA tomorrow. On the slide, you have the school name of the school that is going to be presented. You have the grade levels of the school, the 6-year enrollment projection, and the affiliation status as far as if they're sponsored by an EMO. The first one is the Do and Be Arts Academy of Excellence. It is a K through 8 program, and at the end of 6 years, they'll have approximately a total enrollment of 630 students, and they are non-affiliated, so that means that there's not an EMO or a CMO that is part of that group. The next one on the list, of course, is George Washington, and that information is there, but they are not going to apply at this time. They may come back and apply at a later time. Mind Your Books Charter School is a K through 8 program with a maximum enrollment at the end of 6 years of 280 students, and they are also non-affiliated. Pioneer Technology Academy in Nevada and Arts Academy of Nevada also proposing a K-8 program with 1,062 students. They are under a charter management organization out of Arizona, Colorado, and Texas. Pioneer Technology Arts in Nevada 9 through 12 is anticipating a total enrollment at 6 years of 416 students. They are also under a charter management organization, and again, out of Arizona, Colorado, and Texas is where they're currently operating. Thrive Point Academy of Nevada is a program that's 9th through 12th grade. They're anticipating 1,400 students at the end of 6 years, and they are a charter management organization, and they're in 2 states currently, Arizona and California. Vegas Vista Academy has 2 components to their application, a K through 8 component, which is estimated at 450 students at the end of 6 years, and they are also non-affiliated. Vegas Vista Academy, a 9 through 12 program, is anticipating 200 students at the end of their 6-year enrollment program, and they are also non-affiliated in that program as well. When we look at these applications, we have a rubric that we use. There are 2 different rubrics, one that is used for a K through 8 program and one that is used for a 9 through 12 program. As we go through this, you'll see that the different areas basically look at performance. In the areas of demographics, we look at, the SBCSA looks for constant underperformance in grades 3 through 8 in the areas that they're going to place these based on the Smarter Balance Assessment in mathematics and English. In academic geographies, they look for schools to go into areas that are 1- and 2-star schools on the NSPF based on the 2018-2019 school year ratings, and schools that have received an NSPF index score of 50 below for the 21-22 school year. Again, those are put out by the SPCSA. And the last component is demonstrated capacity. And this is looking at at applicants who have a track record of being able to put schools that are 3-, 4-, and 5-star schools in zip codes with significant percentage of students attending schools that received 1 or 2 stars on the NSPF for the 2018-2019 school year and received an NSPF score below 50 for the 21-22 school year. So with Do and Be Arts Academy of Excellence, in the area of demographics, they did meet. In the area of academic geographies, they met. But having a demonstrated capacity of being able to provide 3-, 4-, or 5-star schools in zip codes that were significantly populated by 1-star schools, they did not meet that criteria. Since they did not meet that criteria, their overall application did not meet as far as our review is concerned. George Washington Carver, since they are not applying, I'm going to go ahead and pass those slides. If the board pleases, at the pleasure of the board, we will review them if they'd like. Mind Your Books Academy, Education, Inc. This is a K through 8 program, as we mentioned earlier, in demographics. They did meet in academic geographies. They also met the requirements. Demonstrated capacity, they did not meet. They did not show that they had done this type of work before. Pioneer Technology and Academy Arts of Nevada, in their K through 8 program, in demographics, they did propose schools that would meet that criteria. In the academic geographies, they did not meet, and also in demonstrated capacity, they did not meet as well as far as serving that population. We're going to move on to their 12th grade program and their 9 through 12 program. And the 9 through 12 program, it has an added component, and that's the demographics in high school. They're looking for underperformance on grade 11 ACT from the SBCSA. Demographics Part 2 is a 4-year graduation rate that is below the NSPF 4-year annual rating. And in academics, it is very similar to the K through 8 program, where they're proposing to place their school is in an area that is populated by a significant amount of 1- and 2-star schools. And the demonstrated capacity, again, are they planning on putting 3-, 4-, and 5-star schools in an area that does not currently have a population that meets that? For the Nevada, for Pioneer Tech, in Part 1 of demographic for high school, and demographics for high school, they did meet. In the second part, they did not meet. In academic geographies, they did not meet. And demonstrated capacity, they did meet. They do have schools in other areas that have some form of demonstrated capacity. Thrive Point Academy of Nevada is a high school, and they did meet in the area of demographics for high schools in Part 1 on the ELA and math and ACT. For 11th grade. Demographics for high schools, they did not meet as far as the four-year graduation rates. Those areas do have graduation rates that do meet the standard as far as the district goes. Academic geographies, they did not meet, and demonstrated capacity, they did meet. They have shown in other areas, other states that they are, and that they were able to provide the services needed. Vegas Vista Academy and their K-8 program, they did meet the demographics, they did meet in academic geographies, they did not meet in demonstrated capacity. Vegas Vista Academy for their 9 through 12 program, they did meet in demographics part 1, demographics part 2, they did not meet. Academic geographies did not meet, and demonstrated capacity also did not meet. If all schools were to be placed into operation, let me check my notes real quick because I want to make sure I'm right on something. If they were all to go in, and this does not include George Washington, it would be 5,233 students would be the approximate impact if all 6 schools were in, it'd be 5,233. You could subtract out from George Washington at that point. This assists us with the current and future growth modeling of the district, examination of additional programs and locations of magnet schools, and targeted marketing to support schools. Trustees, this concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions at your pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Tafoya. Colleagues, are there any questions at this time? Otherwise, I'll jump right in. Mr. Tafoya, question for clarity on that second to last slide regarding the demographics and zoning assessment. Approximately 5,233 students if all 6 proposed charter schools. Did you say that included Washington Carver School?
For the record, Dan Tafoya, Office of School Choice. I believe that is true, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee Cavazos?
I just wanted to make a motion that this is discussion and possible action. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes,
Okay,
please.
so unless my colleagues have any questions, I wanted to make a motion to accept the presentation.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Guzman?
I'll second.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Cavazos, a second by Trustee Guzman. Please cast your vote. Thank you. That motion passes 7-0. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time.
Thank you, Madam President.
We're going to move on to item 4.05. That's the public hearing on and possible approval of the new memorandum of agreement between the Clark County School District and the Police Officers Association. This is an action item, and before we continue on 4.05, if there is anyone who has not had a chance to complete a public speaker card, please do so now. All right, we're going to turn it over to Mr. Hall for an explanation of the MOA between CCSD and the Police Officers Association of Clark County School District.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara. Nevada Revised Statute 288153 requires that any new, extended, or modified collective bargaining agreement between a local government employer and an employee organization be approved by the governing body of the local government employer at a public hearing, and that the chief executive officer of the local government shall report to the local government the fiscal impact of the agreement. The Board of Trustees of the Clark County School District, or CCSD, approved a negotiated agreement with the Police Officers Association of the Clark County School District, or POA. An agreement has been reached pending approval by the Board of Trustees and the Superintendent of Schools regarding a memorandum of agreement between CCSD and POA regarding the health program for school police officers. POA and CCSD have drafted a new memorandum of agreement which memorializes the agreement between the two parties that CCSD will increase its contribution to the health program for school police officers by 15% in the first year of the biennium. The terms of this agreement will be effective prospectively from the date of the approval and signature. There are additional costs in the amount of approximately $200,000 associated with entering into this memorandum of agreement. This is the time and place to conduct a public hearing on, discussion of, and possible action on approval of the new memorandum of agreement between the Clark County School District and the Police Officers Association of the Clark County School District regarding the increase in contribution to the health program for school police officers.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Is there any discussion at this time by the board? Do we have any public comment on this particular item? Okay, colleagues, we are looking for, okay, no discussion and no public comment. Excuse me. Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve item 4.05.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. I just want to note for the record that the hearing is done, and so is the public hearing is now closed. I will entertain Trustee Williams' motion. Colleagues, we're looking for a second. Trustee Guzman.
I'll second.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Williams and a second by Trustee Guzman. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 7-0. We're going to move on to item 4.06. This is an action item. Before I open, is there anyone who has not had a chance to complete a public speaker card on this item? If not, please do so now. This time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hall for an explanation of the MOA between Clark County School District and the Police Administrators Association of the Clark County School District Police Department regarding the health program for qualified police administrators. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara. Nevada Revised Statute 288.153 requires that any new, extended, or modified collective bargaining agreement between a local government employer and an employee organization be approved by the governing body of the local government employer at a public hearing, and that the chief executive officer of the local government shall report to the local government the fiscal impact of the agreement. The Board of Trustees of the Clark County School District, or CCSD, approved a negotiated agreement with the Police Administrators Association of the Clark County School District Police Department, or PAA. An agreement has been reached pending approval by the Board of Trustees and the Superintendent of Schools regarding a memorandum of agreement between CCSD and PAA regarding the health program for police administrators. PAA and CCSD have drafted a new memorandum of agreement which memorializes the agreement between the two parties that CCSD will increase its contribution to the health program for police administrators by 15% in the first year of the biennium. The terms of this agreement will be effective prospectively from the date of approval and signature. There are additional costs in the amount of approximately $16,000 associated with entering into the memorandum of agreement. This is the time and place to conduct a public hearing on, discussion of, and possible action on approval of the memorandum of agreement between the Clark County School District and the Police Administrators Association of the Clark County School District Police Department regarding the increase in contribution to the health program for police administrators.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. It appears I do not have public comment on this item, and there is no public discussion by the board. Let's see, Trustee Brooks. Allow me 1 second. Here we go.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to approve agenda item 4.06.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. I am going to, before I fully take on your motion, indicate that the public hearing is now closed. Okay. Trustee Brooks, motion stands. Trustee Williams.
I second.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Brooks, a second by Trustee Williams. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. The motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Thank you.
All right. Colleagues, we've entered item 5.01. That's the public comment on items not listed as action items on the agenda. Before I continue on to 5.01, is there anyone in the audience who has not completed a yellow public speaker card? Please do so now. Okay. We'll begin with the individuals who have signed up in advance. Ann England, James Bayless, Rakesha Scoiners. If you're in the room, please stand up or come to the podium. Otherwise, I'll continue going down the list, and we can see who's still here. Dennis Kelleper, Vicky Kreidel, Samantha Anderson, Kenny Belknap, Margie Minales. Margie? Perfect. Come on up, Margie, and then after Margie, we'll have Katie Smith, Babe Rogers, Jordan Wegner, and Jessica Sharon. Come on up. After your remarks, you can bring your documentation to the front here.
After? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name for the record.
Margie Manales. So, Madam President, esteemed board members, Dr. Jara, I'm here because CCSD has not given us a proper explanation of why my daughter is being forced to take an elective that she doesn't need for graduation. I've spoken to the principal, Region 2, the deputy superintendent, and emailed Dr. Jara. No one is willing to help my student. I have a distressed child who feels discriminated against and bullied into the class, and I'm hoping my effort can help her get to a better mental state. My senior daughter took photo 1 in 10th grade. By the end, she did not want to continue, but the school assigned her photo 2 anyway. At that point, the school should have emphasized that this class would rope her into a 3rd year. They did not, and she did not sign anything committing her to 3 years of photography. If we had been properly informed, we would have fought to drop the class then. We didn't find out it was a CTE until she was forcibly assigned photo 3 this year. And now photography is being phased out as CTE, so what's the whole point of this? My daughter's telling the truth that she was never verbally told of the 3-year requirement. Mrs. Rosa, the principal, was never in the counselor-student meetings, so how can she be a credible witness? How would Dr. Larson Mitchell know that the school actually followed protocol? She wasn't there. It might have happened correctly at her child's school, but it did not at WCTA. CCSD admin is relying solely on Mrs. Roser's testimony, which she would, of course, say anything to protect herself. On top of there being no verbal notice, there was no written notice in the course catalog. I actually emailed everybody about it, and I have copies right here. The CT section does not list the classes, nor on page 85 under photography does it say they are CTE. How would a student or a parent be able to connect CTE 3-year requirements to photography? They can't. When I spoke to Mrs. Rosa, Dr. Rafer, and Dr. Larson, they just kept repeating that it's clearly described, but it is not. Look at it for yourself. Why are they glossing over such an important detail? This is a blatant lack of transparency by the school. Are they saying it's okay to dupe students and parents and mislead them? What are they protecting? The system? Money from the CTE classes? But isn't CCSD supposed to support our children? Our daughter is an exemplary Hispanic student. She has a 4.88 GPA. She takes honors AP classes. She volunteers as a church youth leader. She plays varsity and club soccer, and her dream is to go to a top college. My daughter is usually a happy, hopeful teen who's friendly to everyone and always lends a helping hand. Ask anybody. Unfortunately, being misled and duped has caused our daughter to be very upset and distraught about school. This is building distrust and cynicism toward the system that is supposed to be helping our children. Point blank, I feel my child is being bullied into taking the class by the school and admin since there was no...
Thank you. Thank you, Margie. You're welcome to bring your documentation up front to Miss Lisa, who's sitting up there. Right here at the front. I'd like the record to reflect that a parent has spoken to, staff have spoken to parents and tried to address this concern. Thank you. Okay, I left off with Jessica Sharon, Jim Frazee, Autumn Tampa, Danny Price, Jessica Jones, Paul Keeneman, Demetrio Fausto, Christy Forehand, Jacob Parker. May I please have the yellow cards? Are there any additional yellow cards that have been submitted? Yep. Okay. Sarah Comroe. After Sarah, we have Hannah Comroe and Julius Mannix.
she's spitting up a little though, so. All right. Sarah Comro for the record. I know that certain board leadership thinks that speaking to board on public comment doesn't effectuate change, but I'm going to say this anyways, and hopefully the other 6 of you will listen. Both of my sons were in the kids program here in CCSD. This is a self-contained autism pre-K. When they started on their 3rd birthdays, both of them were nonverbal. One of them was a runner or eloper, and the other had maladaptive behaviors, including self-injury, aggressive meltdowns, and not understanding safety. They both had 3 years in a kids program class with 1 teacher, shout out to Miss Hay, and 2 SBTAs, shout out to Miss Carolyn and Miss Wade. These 3 amazing women worked as a team to provide behavior interventions, potty training, and most importantly, academics. Both of my sons went into general education 100% of the time by the end of kindergarten. Their lower grade teachers were all impressed with their academic basics foundation, a foundation that was laid by those 3 women. They would not have been able to do the amazing work they did if they were not all in there with them every day. I heard the loss of an SBTA in the kids program was due to a grant ending. My kids had 2 SBTAs in their classes a decade ago, so either this was a 9-year grant, or, like most grants, you have to renew or reapply. So why didn't we? Or did we just not get it? And if we didn't get it, why didn't we apply for a different grant? Or better yet, why didn't we bring special education funding to the legislature like I suggested and was voted down by the board out of fear of looking bad because it would bring up the fact that CCSD is not providing FAPE, LRE, or specialized services that are required by IDEA. We should have moved this event, on another topic, to a different venue. It is embarrassing to work for this district. The pettiness of this board against the educators and educators union of this district is shameful. All this talk of the students and the CCSD Board of Trustees are not pausing to look at how their behaviors are modeling for our children. Choosing to speak after, another topic, after hearing the presentation, we should be able to choose to speak after we hear the presentation. You all get to decide after you hear if you want to say something. Should I just sign up for everything and then say no thanks if I change my mind? I had wanted to speak after hearing that presentation on the chronic absenteeism because I had some input based off of what they had to say, not just what was in the documents. And so that is, teacher connections are hard to do with substitute teachers or teachers that are overworked with more and more piled on our plates. Teacher connections helps solve chronic absenteeism. We as teachers are told this on a regular basis by our principals. In addition to that, busing is still such a huge issue that hundreds of students are tardy to school every day, and many of them say they just go home instead of waiting for the bus after 30 or 40 minutes. So there's another problem with chronic absenteeism caused by the school district.
Thank you, Ms. Comer. Hannah, followed by Julius, and then Jennifer Munoz.
Hannah Comer for the record. For those of you who don't know, I teach the kids program, which is a self-contained pre-K class for kids on the autism spectrum. It usually has 8 students on the autism spectrum, 2 typical peers, 2 SPTAs, and a licensed teacher. The district decided that our numbers could go up by 2, making this a class of 12. The district also decided to take away an SPTA, making this class only have 1. This is a disservice to the students. Often students in the kids program either have toileting goals and or are in diapers. In many cases, I have an SBTA toileting students every hour, if not every 30 minutes for some students. This means that I'm left alone to teach 9 to 11 3-year-olds on my own every time a student has to be changed or taken to the bathroom. This is just not possible. Many of my students cannot sit on their own. They do not have those learning to learn skills. Many students in these programs have behaviors such as biting, hitting, throwing, punching, and eloping. How are we supposed to keep the students safe with less adults? Whoever decided that this was a good idea has never worked in one of these programs. I know me speaking will likely not do anything when it comes to change, but you should know that this is making the kids program a glorified daycare, as I cannot teach 9 to 11 students with behaviors on my own while my SPTA is toiling students or on their lunch break. Being a special education teacher is not easy, and it is an undesired position in this district. Why would you make it less desirable by taking away an SPTA? We wonder why we have so many special education vacancies in this district, and it's because the district makes decisions that do not benefit the students or the teachers. I ask that you find a way to put 2 SBTs back in this program as it impacts the education that these students are getting. Thank you.
Is Julius here? Julius. Jennifer Munoz. Okay. Kimberly Lindsay. After Kimberly, we'll have Janet Lester and Gerard Gomez.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kimberly Johnston Linsday, for the record. Madam President, members of the board, I'm before you today as a parent, a concerned citizen, a patriot of my country, and a Christian. And I am of the belief that speaking at these meetings make a big change. A lot of the issues that I'm going to talk to you tonight about are national issues. CRT, critical race theory, your anti-racism policy is racist. That needs to change, and it will. Parents, I'm not just myself up here. I'm representing a lot of parents. You guys also need to be aware that I've read your Schools in Transition 34-page policy. There's no wonder to me that our grades are the way they are if there's no common sense even in that policy, which is a slap in the face to parents like me across this here district. There are 2 genders, not a giant spectrum, and I apologize. I hope not to be offensive to people in this room today. But your goal to focus on student outcomes and student learning, if there's no common sense in these basic policies that will protect my daughter when she goes to play sports and needs a safe space in her locker room, that needs to change, and it will. That is a national issue, just so you guys are aware. The parents need to be involved. You can't cut parents out. A lot of this legislation stuff that we're talking about that we'll be revisiting in the 2025 session, you cannot eliminate parents, and that is why we're stepping up. We need to be involved in our students and our children's health care, and it is nefarious what is happening in this school district. I also wanted to let you guys know, we pray for you fervently for your wisdom, because you guys are here to protect our children. That's what you say you're here to do. And I want to leave you guys with this. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever should believe in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. I ask you guys all to get to know who Jesus is. You will be judged. There will be a judgment day. Luke 17:2 says, for it will be better for him to have a millstone hung around his neck and to be thrown into the sea than to cause any of these little ones to stumble. This indoctrination of our children, this grooming of our children, this racist policy that you have with your CRT anti-racism, which is just reverse, this DEI stuff you have, so my sons can't grow up and get a job based on their merit alone and what they can actually do, it's despicable what's happening. So we'll be here more often, and we'll be here to speak even in these sessions after in public comment where there is effect and people in the nation are paying attention to this. I pray for you all. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you for your time.
Ms. Lester? Janet Lester? Ms. Cardenas and Stephanie, I see that you had 4.03, but I think you meant this. Okay, yeah, you're almost up. Thank you. Yes, it is public comment, right? Not, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't for, thank you. Perfect, thank you. Mr. Gomez, Gerard Gomez, you're up, followed by Lisa Lemons.
Good evening. I want to start by saying to the Board of Trustees that hopefully all of you ran and were elected for the right reason, which is you care about the quality of education of our kids in this community. But some of you, through your actions, are a rubber stamp for an incompetent head superintendent. I think the previous board was on the right track when they fired him. I think that by rehiring this superintendent, you have done a disservice to this community and to the teachers of this community. And I'd like you to all to do a self-reflection. Have you done your job, and are you doing your job in holding this incompetent superintendent responsible? I don't
Mr.
think
Gomez,
that-
I don't want to ask you again. Please make sure that the comments are for the entire board and not making personal attacks on staff or board
But this is
members.
the quality of education that I'm talking about, Madam
My
President.
intention is not to have a dialogue back and forth.
Okay.
It is, please help
All right.
me. Thank you.
Let me say that is it appropriate to say that the board previously fired the superintendent?
Sure,
Is that
please do not make
okay?
personal attacks.
All right. So by firing this previous superintendent and then rehiring him, I think that right now, and what's going on is we, as a state and being the largest school district in the state, how much have we moved up in national standings since you've hired this superintendent? And the answer in a lot of areas is it's a retrograde. We have not improved. And I would say to the entire board that if you really, really want to represent your constituency, you should get the message to the superintendent. His number one priority should be the teachers. And right now, that is not his one priority. If you look at his record, what has been his first priority? Administration. He just hired, I don't know, 8 or 10 new assistant superintendents, associate superintendents, at a time when we have a huge teacher vacancy, and we have for years under his leadership. Yet that is his priority, is to hire more administrators. I would ask the board to please put the restraints on him and have him shift his priorities to the teachers, or we are never going to move up in our standings. And we need a recognition that teachers are at the foundation of this whole thing that we're all here for. And I would ask for you, please, put the brakes on allowing him to hire more.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Ms. Lemons? Ms. Lemons, followed by Nicole Beer, and then Lorena Cardenas.
My name is Lisa Lemons, and I just came to see what was going on with the school district and the board. The use of a cell phone during meetings is rude, disrespectful, states that the meeting is not important, and shows that you have no use for the board or those that you represent. And then the smirking. I was almost in tears. The smirking for being called out. So, and then leaving the meeting and coming back with a Starbucks. So we know that your order got through. That was really smart. So, and on the cell phone, the whole meeting. I know, that's okay. So now, I'm going to give you a little hint. Just put up a laptop in front of you so that you can goof off and look like you are on task and concerned. You might think this is very petty, but little problems, little shows of attitude create larger problems. Not only out there, in your classroom. I'm a retired teacher. You could fix all of your problems without any more money if somebody had a backbone. That's all it would take.
Ms. Beer? Lorena Cardenas, followed by Stephanie Kinsley.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lorena Cardenas. I remember the words of Irene Cepeda when she called this a Titanic, the sinking Titanic. And fortunately, she's on safe grounds now, but the dysfunction continues. There's still a lot of dysfunction going on between now the teachers, and as amusing as it is to see the attacks back and forth. I mean, because they were at one point addressed towards us. And I do want to point out how Linda Cavazos was very, very strict with the parents whenever we had something to say that, or even said a word, or when someone in our row yelled out said something out of line, you had security confront mothers and drag them physically out of here. So I wonder how that sits on your conscience, because the teachers can do it and security are standing by quietly. But when moms did it, they got dragged out of here. And it's not fair. It's a lot like what we're seeing in politics. One side gets treated different than the other. Also with CCEA, yeah, they want their pay, money's valuable, but so is the health of our children. And when parents were showing up here and protesting so passionately, it was for that reason alone, for the health of our kids. I understand teachers want to be valued, but parents also want to feel that teachers value their children. So while they're standing here and making a list of demands, they're not meeting the demands of the classroom, which is to have our children succeed. The other thing I wanted to mention quickly, the Transgender Regulation 5138. We demand that you repeal that. We're seeing now the chaos that's come from this transgender ideology. I want to note that before 2014, there was not one single case recorded of a trans child. So if they existed, why didn't they exist back then? I think that's a really good question, because in our day, they were called tomboys. No one was trying to medically intervene, have therapists, create groups of, what do you call it here? Gender support plans, right? Where you bring all these kinds of therapists and experts to sit down. But where is the support plan for the children that are failing and that get Fs? We don't see a support plan for them. So I just want to know, to have children succeed, what is the plan to have them succeed? Because you sit around and you talk a lot. You do talk a lot about ways to have children succeed, but you seem more interested in having children be able to express their gender, their genders, or whatever pronouns they want. You want to create that environment, but no one is really sitting down with parents the same way.
Thank you, Ms. Cardenas. Ms. Kinsley? What's your name? Nicole Beer. Oh, you can go after Ms. Kinsley. Thank you. Mhm.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Kinsley. I'm here on my behalf of my children's advocate. I would also like to speak about the waste that's going on in Nevada. I would like to adamantly speak up that these teachers don't deserve another raise. To think you deserve a raise while you're failing children and they can't even read when they graduate is just hysterical as to someone who's only worked in the private sector. Walking through the sea of people who showed up to get a raise, no one's out here going hungry or going without, definitely. But they sure can show up. They didn't show up when kids are being molested by their little pedophile teachers, your coworkers. They're not showing up when kids are being masked, which you have to be.
Please address the board.
No, and the board. This comes to you too.
I'm asking
the
you
masks.
to please
no,
not
then
attack
stop my time if you're going to
staff.
interrupt me.
I am not
no, stop my time.
I'm going to ask.
Okay, so I'm addressing the board. The board, you've allowed this chaos. I would encourage everyone to go to Transparent Nevada if you want to see how much everyone here gets paid, Mr. Jara. Compare it to the paycheck you're taking home. And I'm sick and tired of teachers in this school system fighting for more time off and more raises when the kids are graduating school is not knowing how to read, not knowing how to count back change. But we can put together a task force if your mentally ill kid is confused about their gender. Like, that makes no sense, but we can't do that. Hey, all the fatherless children suffering every day because they're going home to chaos of a single parent household. Children can't read, but we're not putting together a task force. But if you're transgender, let's get a group of people to come to you. Not if you're failing in math, not if you're failing in reading, not if you're just failing in life because your parents are failing you, because they can't stay together and they have a broken home that you're miserable in. Not one of these people are back here going hungry, but they're fighting for a raise. They're not fighting. Not one of these people are talking about fighting for your kids. They'll be the first one. These same people masked your children up These same people masked our children, denied science with a doctorate in biology, masked our children, told them they're bad if they're white, told them they're bad if they're male. And the same teachers' unions are funding Planned Parenthood, but complaining that they can't get a raise. At least I can fit in my seat.
Excuse me, Ms. Kingsley. Please do not engage. Audience, please do not, please, audience, please do not engage with, the individual. Counsel? Oh, that Nicole, forgive me. That Nicole. Miss Beer, forgive me. I know, me too, that's fine.
Sorry.
It's a one. Nicole Beer. Please,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not a six-pack. Okay, so apparently when I don't write out something, I start talking about my wardrobe, so I'm gonna get it out of the way. This is from Shein, it was $7. Okay, so first of all, my superintendent, Dr. Jari, you might have heard his name a couple times today, his number one priority is not me, and it's not teachers, it's kids. It's kids. I'm a member of CCA. A lot of you up there know, and you know, I know after the first round of negotiations that Dr. Jaro sat on the other side. When it was all over, he nicknamed me Pitbull, okay? So I'm a proud member of CCA. I don't want a superintendent whose first priority is me. I like my superintendents to have kids be the first priority. I also like my board of trustees to do that too. Let me get that out of the way. I'm here today, this is tough for me, to tell all of you thank you for policy 6161. And circling back to close that, we were able to get that business done last time. It's hard for me to say because, you know, not everybody up there I'm friendly with, but thank you for a 7-0 vote. Thank you, Dr. Jara, for historic work. I need to keep reminding you that this school district is being written up in white papers all over this country for what we did for libraries. I was on an interview with the head of the library department at San Jose State, one of the oldest library programs on the West Coast. She interviewed me about activism in CCSD with libraries. We are trending, okay? We are trending with this library stuff. So, I'm sorry, did you say something?
Ms. Beer,
No, I just, she's catcalling me back there. So,
Ms. Beer, give me 1 second.
Thanks.
I am going to pause your time, and I'm going to ask the audience to please not engage with public speaker. I'm asking the public commenter to please not engage with the audience. If we continue this back and forth, I'm going to ask members of the public to leave the boardroom. Please stop disrupting public comment. Thank you.
thanks. So I just need you guys to know that you guys have a lot of stuff on your plates, and libraries is just a tiny piece. But you need to know that I know of 4 occasions where on the New Jersey State Senate floor, this district was talked about as a model of what districts can do. This district right here, okay? And so we are doing great work. The policy and equity in 6150, that's a whole nother great thing that we did, okay, on this dark day. The last thing I wanted to talk about is I don't often disagree with Trustee Brooks, but I would say that I don't know that in order to get better at absenteeism, that we have to always use a stick. And I'm kind of a stick person. We have done great things at Martinez, double-digit reduction in absenteeism by relationship building and by models of restorative justice. Before that was a cool thing, and we just kind of knew it by instinct. So if you want to know how to do that, you got to come to North Las Vegas. You got to come talk to Tim Adams, my administrator. That's what we're doing is working. Let's just replicate that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Beer. Is Jennifer Munoz, Julius Mannix in the crowd? Okay, otherwise I'm going to go to Derek Sheets, and then David Gomez.
My name is Derek Sheets for the record. My concern is with 2.02 interlocal agreement between the Clark County School District and Southern Nevada District, Southern Nevada Health District. The preceding topic for this concern is SB 172 from the 2023 Nevada 82nd
Derek,
session.
Forgive me, we are now on items not related to the agenda. You're welcome to speak on anything else outside of items that we've already passed. You've already shared, you were called up for item 2.02 already.
That was 2.09.
Okay, well, we've already moved on from consent agenda. I have you here under item 5.01, public comment. I believe it is for public comment on non-agenda items.
Okay, so this was an item that was already voted on?
It was voted on already.
Okay, all right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Gomez?
David Gomez, Nevada Peace Alliance President. A lot of titles. I don't got time to talk about all of them. But I hate disrespectful people. I like people that fight for what they believe in, but I hate very disrespectful people. If I walk into a teacher's classroom in a school during classroom time and start being disruptive, the way that I've seen that they were, do you think that I would still be standing in a classroom? Do you think I would still be there? They would call campus security. They would call anybody in the world to stop me from talking and shut me the heck up. And they would do anything in their power to say, our children are important. What Dr. Jordan has already said, our children are important. He's always say that, and I hear him say it all the time. He always supports me when I talk about children. If I talk about something else, start talking about fish or something else, he's like, okay, the fish, whatever, the fish, that's not important. The children are important. He's laughing because he knows what I'm talking about, the fish. You know, these are issues that we see. And then I came here to listen to Dr. Mark Barton to talk about expelling and all this other stuff. And I wanted to take a lot of notes, but all I kept hearing was heckling. All I kept hearing was people being disrespectful, the way that they will not allow me to do in their classroom. So I would like to go to each one of these people's classrooms, and I want to be the same way disrespectful they were in here. And they better not call the police on me. They better not call campus security on me. They better not do anything in that form. But yet they're talking about respectful learning environment. You're teaching my children, and I still have children in the school district. Many have adults, have retired Marines. I don't look that old, but trust me, I am. I've been doing this 20-something years when nobody was in here. I'm the one that fought for Charles I. West Prep Elementary with Marzette Lewis to get it built. Nobody was behind us. Nobody was standing there helping us. There was no line of people lining up saying that we need classroom for black and brown children. There was nobody there. But yet, everybody wants to cry about money. Everybody wants to cry about what they're not getting instead of what they should be giving to my child and every other parent's child in this district that Dr. Jara cares about. Doesn't mean that I agree with everything that this man says, but he's still the superintendent. Doesn't mean that I agree with some of the things you guys say, but at times I can challenge those things and talk to you. And Evelyn, you know that I go out in the district and I help the parents. You've had people call you and say, yeah, this parent came and helped me. This advocate came and helped me. This organization came and helped me. I stood in here many years in time. And I'm tired of seeing this. Everybody's complaining about you guys not changing nothing. Well, crap, it didn't change when Carolyn Edwards was sitting there. It didn't change when a lot of other trustees weren't sitting there. What are we doing that we're not helping to fix this problem instead of complaining about it? But yet, we need to look at how we're going to take care of our children.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Colleagues, we're going to move on to item 6.01. The next meeting of the Board of Trustees is on September 6, 2023 at 4 p.m. here in the boardroom. Seeking a motion to adjourn. Trustee Williams.
I keep waiting for Brenda to get it. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Zamora.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Williams, a second by Trustee Zamora. Please cast your vote. Okay. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 7-0. The time is 7:40 p.m. Have a great evening.